Hopefully this works. There we go. What is going on, everybody? Dude, tonight's going to be sick. It's going to be a good one. What's up, everybody? How's it going, Chrissy? How's it going, Lori? What up, Stephanie? Thank you. Squirrel's Nest, Lena, Miriam, SJR, Ayo. Hello, Janine. The Netherlands, let's go. Shout out Fiona. What up, Holly? What's up, Karen? What's up, Mary? Mercedes. River, I might have to get into that. It's just more of I don't know. We'll talk about that maybe more in depth. What's up, Lola, Linda, Clark Griswold, Liv, Angelique from New Orleans. What up, Jamie Ray? Chattanooga. I don't know how I could have a theory on it other than maybe he's just into it. I don't know. West Virginia. Alabama, Kansas. Wow. No, and Willie, I'm not saying Coberger. Someone says, is Coberger really not guilty to you? It's too early in the chat. It's too early in the chat for us to dive into that. What up, Jen? What up? New Zealand, South Florida. You're good, Willie. Scotland, that's my favorite. Spokane, Australia. Wow, that's awesome. Georgia, Michigan, Delaware, Pennsylvania. You know, I'm a Packers fan to the Philly Eagles fan. I'm assuming they're a football fan. The 4th and 26 still haunts me. Oklahoma, the Bronx, Canada, Ohio, another Scotland, Australia, Asheville. Go Birds. North Cali. Wow, this is great, guys. I love it. Apparently a lot more people remember this 4th and 26 than I would have expected. The Netherlands, Charleston, North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, Virginia Beach. For whatever reason, I've never even been to Virginia Beach. I just feel like that sounds like a fun place to live. Missouri. It could be way wrong. I don't know. It just sounds cool to say like, oh yeah, I'm from Virginia Beach. It's getting hot down in Texas today. Mississippi, Philly, Music City, Michigan. You're in Beck's from there too. Nice. Lake Geneva. Nice. So, chat. Well, we are giving people a few more minutes to get tuned in here. What up, Mama Tata? Mama Tata. I don't even know. How do you say it? Is it Tata or Tata? Green Bay. Go Pack. Be Fresh is on a plane. Nice. Thank you, Jen. It's my buddy Josh at Fink Inc. FINKINK. What's up, Carrie? How's it going, Diaz, Pam? So what I was going to say is, all right, chat, let's start this off with a quick poll here. It's been about, 96 hours-ish since the Dateline documentary came out. If you guys can see your screen, it says Operation Bundy Protocol. I felt like it was a good time to really dive into what is all going on with this case because there's so many different lenses and lanes. Phoenix Talks, it's all a distraction. But no, type of one if you've actually had a chance to watch the Dateline episode of the Idaho 4. Not that if you didn't see it, it matters right now? Just curious. Okay, so a ton of people. Someone typed a 5. Beck said 1, sadly. Yeah, Mrs. Birdie and we were crashing out after. Actually, she was like, we got to rewatch that, and it still was just so hard to watch. So, and it's not necessarily relevant for this stream. But man, I got to tell you guys, it feels good to be back on TikTok. It does. It feels good. These are my people. We are each other's people as far as the chat and everything. So, I'm glad that it worked out. So I'm just going to upload all of the full streams to YouTube the next morning. They should be up before noon each day. So I feel like there has been, not that YouTube went bad or anything. It's just different. It's fine. Yeah, I see. Then there's Carrie, like you're saying that. Look, I'm probably going to be bouncing around, but when it's something like this, when it's this kind of a case, I'd rather just stream it here on TikTok. People know where to find me on TikTok, and then I'll upload it to YouTube. It's like a slow transition. Yeah, Purple People Eater. It crawls when you get banned from it. Yeah, I agree, T-Royd. Okay. We're going to give it about a minute and a half more, and then I'm going to delve into this. Okay, I'll sort it out, sleuthing. All right, cool. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I hope everybody had a great Mother's Day. I went mini golfing with my mom, and she won. She actually got a hole in one on the 18th hole, and at this little mini putt course, if you got a hole in one on the 18th hole, it counted your score as 0, and that's how she ended up winning. Super clutch. It was awesome. So, all right, chat. Let's we got 30 seconds until this stream's been on for 10 minutes. So just tap the hell out of that screen for the next 30 seconds, get this out there. And then as you guys are doing that, look, I like to do like presentations. And as you guys know, I type all my own notes. I'm putting this out there as, hey, this is how my brain works. The presentations really help. It sounds like people in the chat, just from past, I guess, polls that I've asked, like, if I were to say like type a 1, if you guys like the presentations, I feel like most people do. It helps you follow, gives good visuals, keeps me and my caffeinated ADD brain on track. So without further ado, I have put together what I'm calling Operation Bundy Protocol. And I'm giving a disclaimer that, again, this is just my thoughts. I obviously have no idea. None of us really have any idea what happened, but we can look through the lens, and we could try to look through a lens for the next, however long this takes to get through. My lives, Jen, they start each night at 7 p.m. Central. So I have only been on for about 10 minutes, which is usually how long I let like the intro where I say what's up to everybody go. What up, Lori? So yes, this is entertainment only, as Phoenix said. Now here's what I'm thinking, guys. If you guys have been following me for a while, if you guys have heard like my theories, like that's what I like to do. I like to look through the lens of like, well, what if that happened? Or like, what if that happened? And I've always been a big believer that while court documents are obviously important, it really only tells what's going down in the like recent past or the immediate future for court, or just of what the event that got this to court. I guess that's all it would talk about. So you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to look at things that happened, before all this went down. And I came up with this name, the Operation Bundy Protocol, and it's pretty much how an unaliving case may have covered up the real takedown. And when you guys hear me say C gang, actually, I'm not even going to say that, C group, just know that I'm talking about the CA group. Okay. So that's what C group means, just for reference. And Phoenix, if you're in the chat, I know I see you in the chat, but if people ask, any of my mods, or if you guys heard that, maybe just let them know so I don't have to stop and keep explaining it. Don't all type it in the chat. Do not do that. Please. I love TikTok Shop. So, all right. Anyways, here's what I believe happened. I think that as I walk you guys through this, you're going to see how this Operation Bundy protocol could have been showing us how an unaliving case may have covered up the real takedown of a C group in the Pacific Northwest. And while the public obsessed over a lone wolf, the real operation wrapped up in silence. So I kind of did this as if like it was like a mission brief. Maybe it's lame. Maybe some people think it's corny. Honestly, I had fun putting this together, so I hope you guys enjoy it. But here's like the mission overview. All right. The Idaho 4 wasn't just an unaliving. It was a tactical diversion. It was done to shield the collapse of a massive federal investigation into the Sonola-backed trafficking network operating through U.S. universities. And what was the objective of this? Well, we're going to use a high-profile, emotionally charged unaliving to redirect public and media scrutiny while federal agencies dismantle C group assets embedded in academic infrastructure. We're going to target, or this was targeted in the Pacific Northwest. The entities that were involved are the DEA, the FBI, the campus law enforcement, criminology departments. Now, this is where I want to kind of point this out. Oops. Oh, shoot. I believe that this timeline for what I'm saying happened from about 2020, the beginning of 2020, end of 2019 till 2025, actually just a few days ago. So that's the window that I believe this was all happening in. All right, so what does that mean in plain language? Okay, so C groups move rugs using college students, frat houses, and rental properties. The investigators get close, but they can't act without major legal authority. And if you've been on my lives before, what I've talked about is how you and I have both witnessed a handful of times, even in the last decade, especially in the last 2 decades, 3 decades, when a tragedy allows people to emotionally palate overreach with legal authority. So in this case, when they need to act without legal authority due to the nature of this investigation, as far as like the public disclosure, they, meaning the feds, the news, the media, you're going to see a high profile unaliving case suddenly happen in a small college town. And so while the media chases the unaliver, I believe that the feds were quietly making arrests, busting safe houses, and flipping informants. So here's like a more in-depth summary. Okay. So for 5 years, from 2020 to 2025, I believe that a covert multi-agency task force was embedded let me start over. For 5 years, from 2020 to 2025, a covert multi-agency task force embedded itself into America's colleges to dismantle a C group linked narco and crypto laundering network. Frats became storage hubs, dorms became trafficking zones, student organizations moved money and product. By late 2022, I believe that the entire pipeline was mapped out. But arresting everyone, that wouldn't be possible to do it all at once. The network, as you guys know, especially that C group, is extremely, extremely well protected. So what is the solution? Well, we need to trigger a distraction so extreme it drowns out the biggest domestic C group takedown in decades. And if you've seen the news, I think also too in the chat we got people that are trolling about saying it's frozen. So, or if it's not trolling, just exit out and come back. And yeah, I'm going to have Phoenix pop up after I get through this. There's not that many slides left. I just want to get through this and then I'll get Phoenix's thoughts. So here's what I think was all happening. As I said, like the tactics that were deployed. Okay. I think that they flipped low-level frat dealers into informants. I think that they embedded feds inside university, police departments, faculty, and administration. I think they tagged psychologically vulnerable students as assets, proxies, or fall guys. Does that ring any bells? And I believe that academic psyops engaged with the criminology professors briefed on the ops, meaning Ramsland, the BTK profiler. I think that party houses were used as recruitment vectors. And I think that what they did is they looked at the Greek life and how essentially students would log social patterns. And that's when I was saying by 2022, I think that federal visibility across the student rug network in Washington, Idaho, and Oregon, as well as Northern California, reached total saturation. They were fully embedded within 2 years of starting that in 2022 when they started it in 2020. So I don't think that Brian Coberger was random, okay? I think he was the behavioral release valve, quote unquote, for public narrative. And that was, he was a failsafe. If the grid collapsed, they'd sacrifice the pawn. Now, I could put my tinfoil hat on right now and talk about how in the Dateline episode, they spelled Ted this way. They spell it this way. Okay, really? Now they don't. Well, okay, I'll show a picture of that later. But it's like, yeah, you know what? It's like he is the pawn. They sacrificed it. Checkmate. This shit's over. We accomplished our thing. Now you guys are probably going to see whatever goes down in court. Who knows? But I believe that the operation was over because when I say Coberger wasn't random, folks, he leaves Pennsylvania. He transfers to WSU months before these busts all go active. Okay. He was priorly placed under Dr. Ramsland, as I said, FBI advisor and a BTK profiler. Dude studies digital forensics, psychopath behavior, and law enforcement responses, pretty much what criminology is. He lived minutes from the target house, yet barely had any hard evidence that connects him to the victims. So this is where I think this all goes active, everybody. This is the trigger moment. Okay. And I believe that this all occurred with the timing because I think federal indictments were ready. They had the high risk safe houses mapped. They had the C group linked crypto that was washed through these college kids' wallets. They needed a story to take the spotlight and completely own the spotlight. And you start thinking about other people that are in the media and how Steve G is all this crypto guy. It's like, guys, it makes so much sense. They thought this shit through. These are very smart people. If you're going to take down the leader of the Sonola C group, it's not getting done overnight. It's going to take years. Okay. So what was the story that had to take the spotlight? Well, in a quiet town, 4 students are found brutally unalived with no forced entry, no motive, and no real digital trail. But the media, they had a gift. They had a criminology student who was awkward that just moved to the town, and he was obsessed with serial unalivers. Arrest him. That's what everybody said. Arrest him. Right. Easy to run with. So while the country screamed serial unaliver, I think that the feds moved silently. And if you guys can see this, who remembers the Cowboys? Because I got a video of it.
Less than an hour ago, we were here,
Just
and
watch
about
everything going in the
5
background.
plainclothes investigators, we don't know if they're local, state, federal, they were inside, and we saw a lot of activity inside the home, and the home was lit up. So we were able to peek in some of the windows, but we saw those men inside the home in the two particular rooms where the murders took place. We did not see them leaving with any materials. I asked them a couple of times, why are they back? They did not answer me. They pulled away in two vehicles. One had a Washington state plate, the other had an Idaho plate. But that is all we can tell you. But we did see a lot of activity. This house was lit up for nearly an hour. They were inside. We don't know why. Nothing seemed to be removed. But as you know, Ashley,
it's totally a Fed van, and I don't think that they expected this camera guy to be right there with a camera and a light in their faces.
Rooms where the murders took place.
Keeping their heads
we
down.
did not see them leaving with any materials. I asked them a couple of times, why are they back? They did not answer me. They pulled away in two vehicles. One had a Washington state plate, the other had an Idaho plate. But that is all we can tell you. But we did see a lot of activity.
Those guys, I just like, I think, let's be honest, you got 4 or 5 burly ass dudes that I don't know if that guy's got a fire pew pew on him, but it seems like they're all keeping their heads down. I'll try to pause it if I get a clear shot of it.
Where the murders took place, we did not see them leaving.
Oh, I wonder if we could you imagine if we could see a Marshall badge? Oh. What is this? Is that an earpiece? Kind of looks like it, doesn't it? Does that look blurred out too? Just like right here? Oops.
With any material.
I don't know. I just think too that totally looks like a I'll go back one more time, but it just totally looks like a federal government van they're getting into.
The home in the two particular rooms where the murders took place. We did not see them leaving with any materials.
Hold on.
Rooms where
please God make me fast and accurate with stopping this video.
Took place. We did not.
Oh, right there. They got that shit blurred out, everybody. That's a Marshall badge. Boom. Boom. That should say everything that I've been saying. What's Gucci, Phoenix?
You see it?
Oh, I see it. I was saying, I was like, God, make you fast and accurate with this mouse to click so I could pause it in time.
I kept saying, go back, go back, go back. You're right. You were right. Spot on.
Oh, man, that's insane. I got to screenshot that.
And the news out.
Yeah, well, and Phoenix, I'm gonna finish. I want you could stay up here. Don't worry about it. I want to go through this because I wanted to play that to show the chat that I'm not out of my mind when I'm like, no,
No,
this
you
is
are.
a huge thing. And that's why there's so many different aspects. People go, what theory are you talking about today? I'm like, no, this is parallel
No,
under the
this is
umbrella.
fact.
Yes.
I thought you were on the right track.
Yep. And so that's pretty much what I wanted to show. Now, oh, son of a, I gotta look into I gotta make sure that this is fine for you guys to see it. All right, there we go. So here is what I think is the best way to describe this. And I'll get it good for you, chat. Sorry. All right. So here's what I think was going on behind the scenes, everybody. You still think this was just about 4 college students? No. This was about nuking a C group channel without causing collapse level of panic in college towns across the country, knowing that the C group has infiltrated the Greek organizations probably at a super high level. All right. I think the DEA used post-unaliving chaos to seize flagged rentals. I think that the HSI quietly deported international runners tied to C group laundering. I think that the F-Rug seizures in Washington and Idaho reached record highs for a reason. None of them were publicly ever tied to students, too. Don't you find that weird? Maybe that is the national security that we heard about in the court docs. Digital forensics wiped out. Informants relocated. Sealed filings dropped. And here are my final thoughts. And then I have one more slide with some statistics. What we were never told was that the Idaho 4 unalivings were the quote-unquote public sacrifice used to end a 5-year multi-state operation targeting the C gang trafficking through the Pacific Northwest that targeted the U.S. universities. I believe that Coberger is either a patsy, he's a burned asset, or he's a controlled sacrifice to protect the federal methods. And the victims, they were either random targets of opportunity of the C group where they found out and they got it. Unfortunately, God rest their souls if that happened. But if it was WITSEC and they were removed, they would need a symbolic player style ritualized cover hit, which is where I think Coberger, being the narrative release valve, the lone wolf obsessed with serial unalivers, would then explain all of the symbolic ritual aspects of it to sell it in the public eye to keep the heat off of everything going on in the background. So now no one's really ever going to talk about what really got dismantled. The pipeline's gone. The crypto wallets are silent now. And you're still stuck on the knife sheath. I hope you guys enjoyed my TED Talk.
Awesome job, Bertie. But you know what they also took down? They took down the head, the middle, and everyone underneath. But they actually took out TCOs. Those are transactional criminal organizations. And why are they important? Because they have offices in foreign asset control. That is why.
Yes. So this was an estimate. Okay. I looked for about 20, 30 minutes on Google of any article that I could find that I felt in my mind would be credible over 5 years. And I was actually pretty surprised. Now, this is a pretty conservative estimate too. You know what I mean? Like I made sure that it was like a large enough rug bust to make bigger news outlets. You know what I'm saying? If that's kind of my criteria. Okay. So the estimated total 2020 to 2025, which also, guys, who remembers when we found in this chat on Alive the funding that started right in 2020? And what was it? And who was it to? I'm telling you, this was a major freaking deal that this happened. And I'll pull up an article at the end of this, but I believe that in the last 5 years, there was 10 to 15 C group link busts or seizures in the Pullman-Moscow corridor. They were either directly suppressed, they were rerouted through sealed filings, or they're about to be bundled into a federal RICO op that targeted all these West Coast nodes. And look at
absolutely.
And then I just want you guys. Sorry, as you say that,
Yeah. we're just not talking about the rugs. We're not talking about the people moving. We're talking everything and cybercrime.
Fuck. I hope that didn't just show. Oh, good. Look at that. I don't know if you guys can see that actually. I'll move it over.
In 5 states. 5.
That's crazy.
It goes down to Utah. They capped on the same day 5 different massive organizations.
Look, and if in Phoenix, you're gonna be able to speak on it better than me just from your experience, but I feel like I've seen enough movies. Not that that's credibility, but there's truth that's in Hollywood, right? I mean, we see it.
Oh.
As far as like if you're gonna take down a giant organization, you gotta hit it all at once. It's gotta be quick, it's gotta be swift, and you gotta have all your shit in a row before you do it.
The most important thing is you have to make it be believable.
Exactly.
Think of the movie that came to my mind when I first heard this case, put it on the back burner. I said I would wait to see some court documents happen. This reminds me of Enemy of the State.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good example. That's a really good example. And I guess Phoenix, you obviously I was focused more on, presenting there. I don't know if you saw questions in the chat. I feel like I hate to sound like I'm playing down someone's level of like IQ to be able to follow this, but I think that this this little cartoon sums it up. As far as someone just said, well, what does that have to do with the students? I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I don't get how what? I think it's very obvious. I think it's rather obvious, and it's not that I'm coming at that person, but it's like, look, the C group started to move their rugs using college students and frat houses and rental properties. It's like, I'm not trying to give the C group props here. It's genius on their end. People are always moving in and out. College kids maybe want to make a quick buck. They're in rental properties. These people are moving in and out all of the time. Okay, so then if the investigators did get close, like we're talking like there are so many people that could be potentially implicated in this. You would need a distraction. And then while that distraction's going on, the feds have the legal overreach and the public's acknowledgement of we'll let you overreach our rights to get this monster off the street, which is really unfortunate because they do end up making everything a law after the fact, as I've gone on tangents 3 million times now about. But again, this is one of those moments where it's like, it's kind of like a gentleman's handshake agreement with us and the law officials of like, all right, like, yeah, obviously if you're going to get the C group out of our universities, well, we have no problem with that. Just keep it for that and that only. Don't start using it on citizens who are protesting or whistleblowing, So I don't know if you have any comment on that aspect, Phoenix.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense when you think about big picture and little picture at the lower end and the higher end. And I kept telling people, look at the 10,000 foot view. Look at from the top down. Yep. Because if this really happened to these 4 individuals, it's horrible. And if obviously, in fact, that the C was using the college students and they had to go and take out someone that was actual an informant, that's unfortunate.
And that's why we've always said, we obviously don't know. Like, I just think in general, all of the evidence that we're seeing in court and the symbolism and the ritualism, again, I don't know, but if I was a betting man, I would say that there is as equal of a chance of it being a hit that this went wrong and the op got burned as no, the op was successful, hence why the leader is now in custody after a 5-year operation. And these individuals needed to be protected, hence why even that one girl's mom says, no, she moved away. She started a new life in the NBC Dateline doc. And also look at the timing of that Dateline documentary dropping within 96 hours of that bust. My wife made a joke. She goes, it's almost like they were like, shit, this comes out in 2 days. We got to throw it together. Maybe they did. Maybe they literally did. They were tasked with, hey, yes, the op's done. Now release it. Reinforce the narrative. We just can't
They
have
had
people
no
figuring it out.
choice.
Yes.
They had no choice because this bust is still hot. It was 5 days ago, 6 days ago, 5 or 6 days ago. Remember when we started talking about this, how many people came against us and said, no, no, no. I don't think they wanted the cat out of the bag just yet, per se, because now with what's happening in the case with Coberger, that they, I guess both sides struck a deal not to use the IgG tip, the federally policy that they ignored.
Yep.
And if they allowed that to come into this case, it would set precedents to, just walk all over our rights if we had our DNA in a database. And I think that's more than likely to cause a hindrance in this case. Is he guilty? Who knows? Did he do this? I mean, we've talked even about maybe an asset that had to do certain things. I don't know. There's not enough evidence. Like I said, I think that this was all a big distraction until they got what they needed. And they did.
And so, Phoenix, to that point about the IgG, I want to point out a part in the documentary that I think went over a lot of people's heads. Maybe it didn't. It went over my head the first time. So let's look through the lens of people who maybe tend to side with just court documents. Okay, I think it's important for us to do this exercise because there are people that have said it to me. Birdie never reads the court documents. No, I do. And as I said in the beginning, I just think that the court documents only tell a fraction of the story. But let's look at from a legal process standpoint, especially in a Supreme Court capital case where a man's life's on the line. What Phoenix just referenced with the IgG and how the FBI said, well, that one lady was like, well, it's not a law, it's just a guidelines. Well, the FBI still broke their own guidelines. And then they had another woman come on the camera and she goes, well, if we just looked at that in itself, and they broke their own guidelines, that they went and they got the DNA from a third-party consumer database. Well, that would tell me, and that loophole is that they didn't need a warrant. Well, why would they go that route? Well, it's probably because they didn't have enough probable cause to get a warrant, everybody.
Correct. And because in order to go through those channels, and you just had a slide up that explains this, they have to go through the right legal process to get warrants. Without a warrant, is it going to get thrown out of the court? Probably.
It's illegal.
It is illegal. And not only that, there have been police officers involved in this case that have potentially have violated some Brady laws. I mean, if you start to look at the history of what's happened here, were there corrupt individuals that were on the department? Absolutely, positively could be, because there are some legal pending litigation in regards to these violations. So I think they're just trying to cover everything, close everything up, put it in a pretty bow for the public. But now that this has happened, how does the public feel after what they've done to Coberger? I mean, someone said, how, if he got off and walked away, he would never be able to work again. He'd never be able to study again. Everyone would know who he is. Absolutely not. This guy could walk away, make millions of dollars, sue the state, do whatever they wanted, and wouldn't have to work another day in his life. Honestly, he could write criminal books.
I mean,
think about the biggest takedown in history.
Yeah, I think it's going to be twofold. I think I would guess that's probably, again, everybody, we're looking through the lens of like, if it happened like this, I would probably guess that there's got to be a little bit of give and take for the person that's going to go in and do it. Because look, I'm sorry, there's probably like at least another 100,000 Cobergers on a conservative end out there. Maybe that don't work with the feds. Maybe that aren't as talented. But I'm saying if you just were looking for that personality type, and I'm not even talking about him being on the spectrum. I'm just saying like the kind of the loner PhD student, right? So I would guess he's either going to sue them to high heavens on defamation, or he'll probably start a new life, new identity, live somewhere else on, kind of not the taxpayer's dollar in a negative way, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Puerto Rico is really beautiful. I'll tell you. I'm sure they would find somewhere all to go really nice.
Yeah. And somebody said, well, how does the green launcher fit into it? Phoenix, this is where I'm going to lean on you because I'm so glad that someone asked.
The green machine, that's what they're calling it now.
Yep.
Remember, at nighttime, and I should just do a sample video to show people what we're talking about. You know, in Hollywood, it's all about the lights, camera, action. And this is exactly the perfect scenario to say, even with the comments about 4chan, the internet, Papa Roger, all these other people that had a play in this, it is like a game. You have got to put out the most information to have people believing, look the other way, distract.
Yes.
In my humble opinion, that car is green. At nighttime, my cameras show me that my plants are white.
Yep.
Okay, they don't show color at night. They show me that my cement is gray. It's white, black, and gray. So if a blue car drove by, it would show me it's a black car. If a
Correct.
green car drove by, it would show me it's a white car. If a pink car drove by, it would show me it's a white car. So if we put logic along with what we're looking at, what we're watching, what we're seeing, there's always something there you don't see. A perfect example is Birdie just showing you what was in that guy's shirt. You didn't see it. Birdie saw it. Birdie has bird eye, eagle view vision.
Yes.
All right. He saw it. He stopped it. He looked. It's like me looking at the cameras at Linda Lane, and I thought, something's not right here. There's just something not sitting right with me. I'm going to look into this more. And boy, the property management company, the documents and the legal documents. Do you know that green car drove all the way down Linda Lane to those apartments in the court documents?
And
it
might have gone
yes,
to Arizona.
Yes, and it is wild. It is absolutely wild. The court documents that trace this vehicle everywhere. This car must have dropped off 4 people minimum, at least in the court documents that I've read.
Yeah. No, to me, looking at it now, I doubt anybody. I feel like I was such a meathead in college, Phoenix. I doubt anybody has ever seen this. Has anybody in the chat ever seen Terry Tate, the Office linebacker, by chance? And I'm going somewhere with this. Yeah, and also, if you guys are just tuning in, I do upload the full lives to YT. Apparently, TikTok doesn't like if you say other platforms' names, but it's at Birdie Bombshells on YT. Okay, so anyways, if you've never seen that Terry Tate Office linebacker, the reason why I bring that up, Phoenix, is it's like almost as if somebody in the DOJ or the FBI, somebody got a position, or maybe they changed. And this has nothing to do politically. I'm just saying, like, it does seem like someone came in and said, they got briefed on what's going on. They're like, oh, hell no. We're cleaning this all up swift, fast. We're getting the C groups out of here. We're getting the corruption out of the local PD. Any corruption in the courts, we're going to expose it. And they wrapped it all up under one giant umbrella of an op. And if that is what happened, I feel like they did it flawlessly, assuming that nobody actually got unalived in there in Witsack.
And this is the first time ever in history that you're seeing it happen live because of this app that we have that we can talk about it together instead of just trying to read it in a newspaper and what they're trying, to push your way with no critical thinking skills. We knew intuitively something was not right in this case.
Yes. And I find it interesting. So this is when I go through and I say, I don't think that Coberger was random, everybody. I said, I believe that Coberger was the behavioral release valve for the public narrative, and it worked. Think about that. That narrative built upon Brian Coberger is so clean that couldn't be random. That had to be built around him. Criminology, loner, new school, doesn't have friends, apparently creeped out all these girls, all this stuff. I found it interesting that on Dateline, they asked the roommate that moved out's mom, why do you think he did this? Her answer was, because they were beautiful. And I'm not saying that there's not weirdo psychos like that, But it just seemed like so surface level. They're just talking. They're not investigating. They're pulling on emotional heartstrings. And I don't know. That was something that really stuck out to me. But I was going to say, to finish that point, when I say Brian Coberger wasn't random and he was the behavioral release valve, what I mean by that is that if this op or the grid collapsed, they'd sacrifice the pawn. Well, what did we see at the end? And people can say, oh, well, that's how apparently Brian Coberger typed it in his phone. How would Dateline know that? How would Steve know all the stuff that he's saying that was on Brian's phone with the star watching apps and all this stuff? How do these people all know that in one of the most gagged federal cases that we've seen in recent history? But you know what's interesting, everybody? You type in H7. Let's do this. I just want to show you guys, again, I thought that was like a digital breadcrumb. Let me screenshot this. I felt like this was a digital breadcrumb. People are like, no, it's a misspelling. It's just right there on the keyboard and that. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, one, if they were going to type it out how Coberger did, right, how would they know that? Two, if it wasn't and just the people producing it did this, don't you think some editor would be like, dude, you spelled that so off? Like, if I just showed you this, would you even know that they were talking about Bundy? You wouldn't even know. But because they were talking about it prior, you would. So what's interesting is this. You put this in, and it says how Coberger might have been a sacrifice pawn. Well, now, what does H7 NDY mean in chess? And it's a relatively well-known thing. Okay, so then it says that it's okay. So here's what's interesting. It says it's a deliberate play on words combining chess notation with the nickname H7. That's a tactical square. Okay, so focus on H7 then. Oh.
Checkmate.
And it also says Greek gift, sacrifice target, classic bishop, sacrifice B, H7s used to rip open the king's defenses. And they took down the king of the C group.
And didn't I say the other day they're playing chess where we're watching checkers?
Yes, exactly. I truly believe that this was an Easter egg that was done on purpose.
There have been Easter eggs all around. Like I said, they're using videos, audios to communicate to whoever they're trying to communicate and get the messages to. You know, I worked in telecommunications in the military. There are different ways to send messages. You don't think about it in your everyday normal situation without getting in big time trouble if you are talking to other countries that you should not be talking to. If you are doing nefarious activities that you should not be doing as an American citizen, that are probably will get you a federal charge. Now, these people doing this were leaving Easter eggs all over the place, Bertie. If you played around with some of the audio files, the video files, watching news network, watching different things, you'll start to pick up on these Easter eggs. You'll see it all over the place.
Well, yeah. And, again, someone just said I try to look at the chat and then my brain gets distracted when I see people go, but why? Who's the king? Guys, it's one of those things where I can't make you, I won't be able to let it process in your brain. I can put it there and I can show you that it, like, critical thinking would explain it. So if you were like, well, who's the king? Why would there be an Easter egg? Well, if this was a giant C group takedown, they just took down the king. They literally took down the leader of the Sonoma C group.
And the reason why, I want you, Bertie, right there where you're at, to look up NLP. And I want you to understand how powerful this is. The media uses it. It's a form of AI. And it'll probably help everyone here watching and in the chat to understand what is NLP and why are they using it on citizens.
Is this the right thing? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
All right. So NLP is natural language processing, the field of AI that gives computers the ability to understand, interpret, and generate human language. You'll see it in ChatGPT, voice assistants like Siri, spam filters, and machine translation. An example would be Google Translate.
Right there.
Whoa.
NeuroLinguistic Programming.
Interesting. It's a controversial set of techniques that claim to reprogram the brain's patterns through language and behavior modeling, popular in coaching, therapy, and self-improvement circles. Examples: anchoring positive emotions to gestures, like a thumbs up, using language to influence thinking, like mirroring body language to build rapport. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's wild. But Dateline was using some of those key strategies to convince the public this guy is guilty. In our own human minds, we're like, no, this guy's picture's creepy. No, they used AI. Well, they said this and this. Have you seen the videos of people saying, well, Xana ran up the stairs and did... They've already convinced people that Xana ran up the stairs when she actually wasn't even there.
Guys, I'm not even joking you. I felt like the Dateline episode was like a ChatGPT script on bath salts. Okay. It was so just scripted. And I get it's a show, but it's like now they're telling us there's a chasing scene in the stairwell. And that's how the sheath potentially was there. And it's like, well, if that's the case, how did the sheath potentially end up underneath the victim? I mean, I don't understand the well, it's almost like this. The media is powerful. And if you've noticed around controversial cases, I can't be the only one that's picked up on, depending on how the media swings it to the general public, it allows people to process the corruption or the things that are wrong with the case. Perfect example, the Karen Reed case. Now, that one actually could be happening that way. Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie. I don't think many people questioned that. Fox Hollows, people are saying that's weird. It's because of the way the media frames the narrative, everybody. That's why I call the show narrative warfare, because the media gets to pick and choose what narrative the general public sees on it. They don't actually allow people to think for themselves. They want to tell you what to think. Now, if you were to just look at this on paper in the court documents and you saw that a man, for the first time ever in U.S. court history, had to prove a reasonable suspect before the trial so that there was no surprises, and that you saw that the only thing linking him to the crime scene is touch DNA that doubled in size after it came back from the lab, where there's no chain of custody, no record of who touched it, who got it when, and the guy's defense attorney is getting surprised in court telling the judge, we don't know how this happened. Can somebody tell us how this happened? And you look at how the media has made this man guilty prior to him even getting a trial. I am not defending Brian Coberger if what the news says is the truth, that he did this because he was jealous of their beauty and he was unable to attain women like that in his life. So he went in and he unalived them with a single fixed blade K-bar. Then he should burn in hell. But my brain, my intuition, my spidey senses, they're going off that something is not right here.
Absolutely. And we can go down third-party doctoring, because that's basically what happened. There was no chain of custody for evidentiary to be entered into the trial. There was no chain of custody. When you do not have, remember when I started talking about the IRE rules in Idaho, those are rules of evidence, you have to have a perfect chain of custody. They were missing that. It was never going to be evidence.
And from a general American viewpoint, I would say, if he's guilty, we should have the faith the system will prove that to the peers and the jury. And a Supreme Court case where this man would get lined up in front of a firing squad, I just feel like everything should be 100% on the up and up, through and through. And anytime that someone is put in a position for that penalty, whether you agree with it or not, I don't even know. I guess I really have never even thought about how do I feel about the penalty. I'm saying more, I'm talking about the process leading up to it. There should never be a doubt if that's on the table.
Absolutely. I mean, I keep going back to the fact that when Coberger was arrested in Pennsylvania, The only thing he said through his attorney is he cannot wait to be exonerated. Like, he knew how this was going to play out.
And he asked, like, so again, Phoenix, you've talked about just, and I hope it's okay I bring this up, like with your son, you had said like you could see how he might act socially in certain situations, but his brain totally understands it, right? Am I describing that right?
Absolutely. He'll go talk about molecules and all kinds of scientific things, and I haven't even thought about it, right? And then he'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And then he spews out 20 or 30 facts that he's already thought about it in 5 minutes from his plethora of his database in his head. And I'm like, dude, where did you learn all that? I just know stuff. And I'm like, well, obviously you know more than I do about it. So you just teach me and then I'll learn and see what I retain. But if we keep hearing the same things over and over again in the world of autism with my son, it's like he's a little tiny computer and he figures it out. And he figured us out really fast. Well, people socially around him are like, that's awkward. How do you know all that stuff? That's too weird, right? He can talk and game and make and create and build 3D architectural designs, but yet put him in a room of girls and he's going to sit there and he's not going to think about, oh, how pretty they are or this and that. He's thinking about building his, architecture or whatever.
And I was going to, and to that point, to segue off that, so Brian apparently asked, did anybody else get arrested? I wonder if that was one of those things where he's like, he knows he's undercover. He knows that he's doing this stuff. He knows maybe that he's going to be this person that if the op goes bad, that's why he got sent out there by his professor, one of two that one of the top professors ever wrote a letter of rec for, ever. He was that well qualified. I just don't know. It doesn't make sense. If he asked if anybody else got arrested, I don't know. I don't know, but he was the best one to fit their narrative. He was probably the best person look at what
they had that they knew of in the local area that would an outsider. I mean, just that alone, get all them outsiders out of here. But the only thing when the news reported that, if it's accurate, allegedly, did anyone else get arrested? Well, he had already known about Kopaka's demise at the first stop in Indiana on the 15th. He didn't get arrested until 30 days later. So everybody's saying, oh, Kopaka. Take Kopaka out of this equation. Maybe he was BK's backup, right? Maybe they were in this thing together. They were the two that were looking out and investigating. Who knows? We don't know at this point. But I do know when allegedly he said, did anyone else get arrested? Well, obviously it wasn't Kopaka. He wasn't talking about Kopaka. Who was he talking about?
The other part too that I was kind of saying, and the chat helped me out, like the whole you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink. It's like, guys, I hope that people can at least understand that if there's a giant secret federal operation to take down the leader of the freaking cartel, and I'll just say it, that's what I mean by C group, because it seems like there's confusion. If that's going on, do you think that we're going to know the tactics? Do you think we're going to be told it straight up where people are like, do you really think they would do that? Yes, I do think they would really go to those lengths. And absolutely. I do think they would go to those lengths to keep the people that are helping them get this done safe. And I do think that witness protection is probably way more vast and real and in-depth than we would ever expect. And it's just weird how, again, depending on the case, people pick and choose what they allow their brain to wrap their head around of being possible. As I'm saying all this, I'm going through and I'm trying to find this. You know what? I'll pull it up because Phoenix, we've done this a couple of times. I just want to comment real quick on the national security. So under the blanket of national security, if something is that high of level, which obviously this whole thing was, allegedly, they would have carte blanche, right? They would do what they have to do. Judges have immunity. Police are protected. They can lie in certain situations. And under national security, they have the ability to tell the public whatever they want. Yeah, exactly. And it's legal to use propaganda on American citizens in America, by the way. So that's That's also what's going on. I have shown this before, but Phoenix, I don't know if there's a better time to maybe replay it for some of our newer viewers. Let's go and let's now watch this interview again. And let's point out how this interview, which is only 2 or 3 weeks after this happens, they lay out everything that's going to transpire. This is 30 days or 29 days or 26 days, something like that, prior to Coberger being arrested. How did they know all of this, and how did they lay this out? Well, I would argue that if this was an operation, they are doing what's called planting the seed of the narrative into the public's brains.
Hey, will you do that? I'm going to drop down because I know Devil's Advocate's coming up, so I'm going to drop.
Okay. Thank you, Phoenix. Give it up for Phoenix, everybody. Always a top dog. All right. So here we go. Let's watch this. And Devil's Advocate, if you're in there, if you're in here, I guess come on up. All right. While I'm waiting for that, let me check my text. All right. Let's just go and watch through exactly how they're going to lay out this entirety of the case prior to it starting. They lay it out crystal clear. It's so obvious after the fact.
We are on the hunt for answers for them. Moscow deserves answers. The students of the university deserve answers. These 4 young innocent victims deserve answers, and so do their families. So let's start there. Joining me now on set, the parents of Kaylee Gonzalez, Christy and Steve Gonzalez. Thank y'all so much for being with me. You guys have been so transparent and strong for the public. Christy, you called the person that did this the boogeyman.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
It's literally like what nightmares are made of. Like when you're a little kid and you think of the boogeyman, that's just how I feel. Like that's just...
We've talked about how that there's like a lot of cryptic stuff. And somebody said, like, the boogeyman, well, what does the boogeyman do? The boogeyman sneaks in your bedroom and you hide under the bed from it and pulls you out from under the bed. And then that's where you go. Steve says he didn't have to go upstairs. And it's like, holy shit, is it like the boogeyman where maybe the girls did witness something going on? They ran upstairs and that's why he followed them. They were hiding. But the part of this interview that I want to point out, and then Devil's Advocate, I saw somebody said you've been trying to request. Let me just play this. Give me 2 minutes and I'll get to you. Oh, there he is.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you guys all hear me all right?
Awesome sauce.
All
So
right.
before we get too far, let's get a sound check on YouTube. Are you guys getting the stream audio from his side when he talks?
And while you're doing that, Devil's Advocate, for anybody in my chat, I'm not going to be able to show the rest of that video right now. That's totally fine. I've done it a bunch of times. I'll have that first half of the stream as well as this up on YouTube as well. But Devil's Advocate, what is up, my brother?
Yeah.
How you doing, my guy?
It's so cool that we finally pulled this off. We've been trying to do this like week after week, and we just can't seem to get the secret sauce down. But I think we're maybe figuring it out.
I think we are. And I hope that everybody can see me on the half screen. Every time that we do this screen, I love how my wallpaper looks because it's only that's all you can see.
Instead of the whole widescreen room.
Yeah, Mrs. Birdie goes, "Hey, what kind of glue did you use to put that on there?" And I was like, I don't know. What do you mean, what kind of glue? She's like, is it like wall safe? Is it like renter friendly? I'm like, oh no, I actually ordered the glue that I was like, I want to make sure this shit never falls off. So I might have to have like a sander when I move out of this place.
So I caught you midstream, right? You've been going for an hour, and you had to stop in the middle of a video and everything to do this?
No, it was a video that I played in the past, but we were talking about kind of the Dateline NBC episode, and
oh god,
and I did a presentation which will be uploaded on my YouTube channel, Birdie Bombshells. I went deep on how there's so many lenses that you can look at for this case. Of was it ritualistic? Was it witness protection? Was it really just straight up what the news said? And I went through like a larger operation that essentially this was to take down cartel groups that were operating on U.S. soil using the universities to run their product. And they were using crypto. They were using Greek organizations. And I believe that it's not a far fetch or a stretch to think that Brian Coberger was the narrative release valve. If the op went sideways, his personality, who he is, who they built him out to be in the media, would completely allow for the cover of somebody who is a criminology student, loner, incel that studies serial unalivers. And I believe that was going to be his role. Now, that's looking through the lens. I'll give a disclaimer for your chat and for everybody that might be new in mine. I am not up here, nor is Devil's Advocate up here, defending Brian Coberger if he committed this heinous crime. He should burn in hell, right? Like,
right.
There's something inside of me as like a person, my intuition, my gut, it tells me that I just don't believe that this is the case. I would say, I'll go as far to say I'm almost 100% sure he didn't do it by himself. Right. I'm like 99.9%. Now, if he had involvement with being the cleaner or whatever it is, or if it's a federal operation, that's what my brain enjoys doing. I like looking through stuff through different lenses. I know you do too.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's where I'm at as well. Everything you just said, but I want to reiterate it for because it can't be said enough. We're not looking for somebody who committed murder to get away with murder. That's not our shtick. Again, on my focus, I've always presumed innocence until proven guilty, and I think that law enforcement and mainstream media and the judicial system is overhanded in convicting somebody that they think is guilty. So I don't know that he's going to get a fair trial. But like you, if Brian Coberger is involved, I can't imagine a scenario in which it's all by himself. No. I think there's others involved.
I would totally agree with that. And so most of the time, and just so you guys know, whether it's Phoenix Talks, whether it's Devil's Advocate, or Sammy T Mafia, who are my regular guests, we talk offline about, hey, what time do we want to go on? How do we want to set up the stream? All of us like to just kind of go off the cuff and start talking about some stuff. So with that being said, I had texted you saying like, hey, maybe we talk about the Dateline episode.
Yeah.
If you watch that.
Yeah.
Or if you have something else that you want to start off with, let me know.
Well, I thought I had an idea because frankly, as much as I love your stuff and going live with you, stuff like that, I don't watch all your stuff, right? So I know you're talking about a crap ton of stuff. So I thought maybe I'd tell you some highlights of what I was looking at this week.
Perfect.
And maybe you can tell me some highlights of what you've been looking at this week, and we can go with it. And you're right, like, you and I are a little different. I tend to script my shows. I know exactly what I'm going to talk about. You're more of a kind of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of guy. And I dig that, which is cool because on Mondays I can let loose and let us just go where it goes, right? So I'll tell you some things that happened in my world real quick, and I'll try to be brief. And then maybe you tell me what happened in your world this week, and we'll see where we cross over and what we want to talk about.
Let's do it.
So, so I had a lawyer, I had an attorney on my show talking about Luigi Mangione, and I know you only recently got into the Luigi Mangione, and thank you again for letting me introduce some of your folks to that. So I had an attorney, Ali Benevento. She's a 15-year criminal defense lawyer who came on and talked to me about all the legal issues in Luigi's case and what's going on out there. So that was really cool. I just decided to kind of get into watching a documentary on Netflix that I thought relates to true crime, which is the Gone Girls Netflix special 3-part series about the Gilgo 4.
Yep.
Holy shit. I only got to episode 2. 1 was kind of boring. I hit 2 and my mind about exploded. I'm like, this is what I'm telling people law enforcement does. But anyways, that's something we could talk about. Those are pretty much the big highlights for me is kind of and then the Dateline. And of course the Dateline episode. And I did a long reaction thing to the Dateline thing, but we haven't done it on a live. So I'm totally cool with talking about Dateline or whatever. But that's kind of my recap. And I was curious what you've done this week.
Yeah. For sure, man. I remember when we were on live last time, you said you're trying to get this attorney on, or that maybe you said you had it scheduled. That is something that I've been trying to do. I've been trying to get an ex-homicide detective. Actually, the guy,
right.
Yeah, I don't know if you were in my chat, but for everybody, the guy, if you remember the Slender Man case in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where the 2 girls stabbed their best friend at a sleepover, the cop that was first on scene that found that girl was assistant Pee Wee football coach with my father. And he was on the cover of Time magazine. He's now like a school police officer, like whatever they call like the administrative cop at a high school. So I don't know if he'll do it, but I've been trying to get him on because I just think that's like that's a high profile case that's got a lot of parallels with the stuff we talk about. I'd be curious, like from an internal law enforcement standpoint, how does it affect the way that you go about the case when there's that many eyes on it? Is it, you could say you operate like normal, but let's all be honest. I mean, there's pressure. There's a lot of pressure. So I'm curious with the attorney that you had on, what did you find out? What did you ask?
One of the coolest things first of all, Allie was giving a lot of insight into attorney-client privileged eavesdrop phone calls, which was a big issue that happened, and whether or not that was truly illegal, But what I thought was the coolest thing that was with Allie was I asked her about the relationship between a criminal defense lawyer and her attorney, and I asked her point blank, "Have you ever had a client of yours say, 'Yeah, I did it, and I want you to get me off on it,' kind of thing? And where's your ethics and your morals at compared to like when you know for a fact? I mean, the prosecutor's case, you know what they've got. So whether he confessed to it or not, whether he did. You have a hunch. And have you ever had?" And she's like, "Yeah, she's had somebody. She had a trial. She told me this was a highlight that I thought was fascinating. She had a trial where everything was going great until the very end." And her client got on a phone call in the prison system and bragged about killing the people that he was about to have a good chance getting off on, and bragged about it. And that came into court at the last minute and screwed her whole case because he was bragging like, "Yeah, I killed him and I enjoyed it."
Oh my
she's like,
God.
"Stay off the phone."
Are you serious? And so
I was stunned.
So you're telling me that person that did that with the phone call, they had told their lawyer, "I did this, get me off."
Yeah, and we talked about that. I mean, I was wondering if a defense attorney would be blunt enough and willing to admit that, yeah, I've been told. But yeah, she says, it's not uncommon for a client to tell her. In fact, she would encourage her clients, "I want to know everything that happened. I can't defend you if I don't know the truth. If you're lying to me about something." And what she said was, if a client has told her he's committed a crime or done something, she's not putting that person on the stand because she's not going to let that person lie under oath. So she's like, "Okay, well, now that I know that you did this, what we need to do is make sure you never get on the stand because I'm not going to have you lie under oath and admit to these things."
Oh God. See, like that's one where like chat, I'm going to ask my chat a little poll question. Answer 1. Could you be a defense attorney and do that with your moral conscience, knowing somebody did that and still try to get them off? 1 for yes, 2 for no. And devil's advocate, I'm curious if your chat will answer with that. Cause man, how do you feel on that? Cause that's, I mean,
yeah, I'm getting a 2. I'm getting a 2 over here. Is that 2 means no? Is that what you said?
2 means that their moral ground won't let them. I
think
absolutely.
Somebody says.
Yeah, someone said 1. Someone said 1. Yeah. Depending on what they're paying me. Which, I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, everyone's got their price tag.
Well, and I'll answer it as bluntly as Allie did. Here's my thing. Matter of fact, oh my gosh, she had such a clip. I don't even know if I can repeat this on TikTok. I don't know how she got away with it. She said, sometimes attorneys have dark sense of humor, and sometimes they'll even joke on the inside. Sometimes the defense is, sometimes an MFer has to go.
Wow.
And I was like, now she said it's dark humor.
Well, I mean, depending on the case, like if it's if you truly feel like it's justified, like if it's an SA or a DV or something, like, and I don't know how that all works. I'm not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice.
Right, absolutely. And I say that all the time. Here's the thing. My personal view is this. Yes, I don't think, I don't like the idea of a person who's guilty walking. However, I guess because of my belief in law enforcement being held to a higher standard, anytime I find law enforcement doing underhanded things to convict somebody, even if they're guilty, I would rather let that guilty person walk than let law enforcement continue to do shady, underhanded shit because we know he's the bad guy, so we're going to make him go down. So I could, I guess, if you were asking, in good conscience, defend somebody I know is guilty if they're being set up, they're being railroaded, and the law is not playing fair. I just want a fair trial, period. I want a fair trial. So if you get him fair and square, then great, justice prevailed. But don't do shit illegal and don't rig the case because he's the bad guy and we're going to make him go down.
See, I tend to agree with that. All right, not even 10. I do agree with that everything on the court system should be on the up and up. But sometimes I do wonder, like, you know, is there ever a time, I'd be curious what like an attorney would say, is like, is there ever a time where like, you know that somebody did something, they'll never do it again, but could
I got a surprise for you, bro.
Okay, what?
Ali Benevento, the attorney we were just talking about, just dropped in my live on this side.
Shut the hell up.
Oh yeah,
dude, get her up here.
Oh, I wonder if I mean, I don't know if she wants to. Ali, if you want to come up, I'll try to bring you on a guest on our side. I was just quoting you and hopefully not making you look too bad on there, but yeah.
Chat, do you guys think Devil's Advocate should try to bring her up? That'd be great. And I'll let you know what my chat says. Type a 1 if you guys want to see her. I'm sure they'll flood in. That would be incredible.
Yeah, that would be very cool. I mean, this is kind of off the cuff for her flying in at the last second. But when I saw her drop in and say, hey, I heard my name, I was like, really? She just dropped in.
I can't even read the ones. They're going so fast.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm waiting for her. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'll send her an invite, and if she rejects it, she rejects it, right?
Yeah.
So let's go here.
Chat, on my end, if you guys got any questions that like you would want to ask, type them in the chat.
It looks like it can't send her an invite. Is that because the co-host format doesn't allow us to bring guests in as well?
I don't know. I'm not sure. If not, then I apologize for getting everybody all excited. I mean, if I did...
Yeah, I just tried to go to invite guest, and well, you know what? I think we can add her as a co-host.
Yeah, why don't we try?
Would that be crazy?
That'd be badass. That'd be sweet.
Let me see if I can find her on my list.
And as you're doing
everybody's seeing my mirrored phone, so...
No, we're not seeing it.
No, on YouTube, they're seeing my mirrored phone. I'm mirroring my phone on YouTube. So everybody on my friends list and invite list is showing for everybody. Shoot, I don't see her on that list. Darn it!
I wonder.
That'd be kind of cool if we could ever come up.
So you're on YouTube though?
I'm on YouTube and TikTok. So I'm doing TikTok off my phone, and then I'm mirroring my phone to YouTube. I got like a lot of shit going on. This is a complex system, and in fact, somebody told me, "Can you have Birdie turn up his volume?" And I'm like, I actually have to turn up Birdie's volume, so I turned up your volume so they could hear you better.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
But anyways. So if we can figure out a way to get her on, we will. But anyways, I was just, and if Ali can request from me, see if she can do that, if she would like to come up. But yeah, it was amazing to me because it was one of those things like, I asked her other questions.
She has to go live, Devil's Advocate, just so you know.
She has to go live.
She has to go live and then come and request to join.
Okay. Well, if Ali, if you'd like, I mean, it sounds like Birdie's okay with it. I'm okay with it. If you want to join us on the live, then try to go live and then request to co-host with us, and hopefully we can make it. You're okay with that, Birdie?
Yeah, I don't care. And I can, on my end, I'm able to. I just.
Now, unfortunately for you, though, you're a little behind right on the Luigi case. So you'd be like, I just got to sit there and listen to you guys.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if much of my chat is up to date on it. So why don't you tell me about the eavesdropping thing? Because I was watching your video. Didn't you post something about it?
Yeah. So do you know anything about the eavesdropping thing, or you need
other than what really you kind of just fired off? I haven't.
Yeah. So it came out. There was a recent court appearance in which Luigi Mangioni's attorney was notified just before coming into court that she had been notified that a paralegal had listened in on an attorney-client privilege between her and Luigi and listened to the entire call and then turned over the contents of that conversation to both the state and the federal government, told them in detail what was on that attorney-client privilege phone call. And so Karen said to the judge, Your Honor, I just found out that they're listening to our phone calls. The judge responded with, prosecution, Mr. Prosecutor, could you please explain yourself? He lied and said, this is the first I've heard about it. That's been proven to be a flat out lie. So the judge said, you've got 7 days to write me a letter and explain what happened with the listening in on an attorney-client privilege call, which is illegal. They responded by first a letter saying that a paralegal had inadvertently started listening to the phone call, but as soon as the paralegal realized what the call was, they hung up. Within like a day later, they amended the letter and came back and said, on further review, the paralegal listened to the entire phone call and turned over those phone calls to the prosecution in the state and the federal government. So they admitted they lied about the whole thing. It was listened to in entirety. Then they started to blame Karen Ignifilo for the mistake. Well, the attorney has a responsibility to make sure that her client calls on a secure line. Karen didn't tell us she was going to be using that line. All phone calls in jail systems are recorded. She knows that. So shame on Karen for using the wrong line, which we talked to Ali about. And I said, is that true? If at the point that they realized it was an attorney-client privilege, did it matter that she didn't have a secure line? Should they have stopped listening? She said, absolutely. She said they should have stopped listening. They cannot be listening to that phone call, but they did. And
Jesus.
so somebody, right, and the prosecutor was recused from the case. And now that's a huge thing. The prosecutors were recused right after admitting that they had listened to attorney-client privilege call. Now, they won't tell us why they were recused. And a person can recuse themselves because maybe something came up, their daughter's got a birthday and they can't do the court case, whatever. They can recuse themselves. Somebody at a higher court can recuse them and say, you've been recused because you did prosecutorial misconduct. Why they were recused, we don't know for sure. But Allie seemed to think, if I'm hopefully not being out of turn to tell her, as I did, that they were recused because of prosecutorial misconduct and they were trying to do damage control. Like, hey, we took care of it. The guy's been fired. We'll put in a new prosecutor. This won't happen again. But again, you can't put the genie back in the bottle once it's out like that.
How hard would it be to not listen in, though? If you just stumbled across that. Oh, man. See, that's where it's like, I would just be like, how do I hang up right now? How do I not listen to this entire thing? I don't understand why I think that way right now. I mean, I don't know. It would just be tough. Now, it's like, obviously, you want to win a case if you really think the guy's guilty. But yeah, it is misconduct. And it goes back to what you talked about, where it's like, I think that like the majority of people would agree with you and say that if you're guilty on maybe not a super heinous crime and the police tried to frame you or the courts tried to do you dirty, you'd rather almost see that person walk away and have them get you on the up and up and through and through and have it be, all right angles in the case. But that's interesting, man. So like, is her opinion that he's going to walk?
If I were to summarize Allie's position, she didn't make a prediction, but she did say that she thought a hung jury is a real possibility. She kind of hinted a couple times that she actually might lean towards expecting it to be a hung jury, or at least that's a very likely possibility. We talked about jury nullification, which is the idea that a jury can say, yeah, he's guilty, but we don't care. And she said that's actually a possibility as well. I asked her, is that a pipe dream on people's thing, or is that actually a possibility? She's like, it's a possibility.
Dude,
so,
I want here. And so for everybody in my chat that's asking what we're talking about the Luigi case, but Devil's Advocate was the one that really introduced me to this case in depth. One of the things that I thought was so crazy, and if you can explain it, if you think you can explain it like accurately and relatively quickly, I don't want to make you feel like you got to go on, a 30-minute lecture about it. How you described that this case, if it plays out this way, essentially big pharma would be put on trial. Can you go into depth a little bit about that again, how you explain that?
Yeah, so, and I want to be clear that I'm not sure if Allie 100% agrees, although she did agree in principle that this could happen this way. So one of the hints is that Karen, so again, Luigi Mangione is accused of shooting Brian Thompson, a CEO of United Healthcare. He's pled not guilty, right? But there is a scenario in which his attorney has indicated that after the U.S. Attorney General called Luigi Mangione a murderer of an innocent man, which she should have never done. She did that from a public pulpit and said that he already is basically the murderer and we're going after him for the death penalty. Karen fired back and said, referred to this case as the murderous healthcare system. She referred to the healthcare system as a murderous healthcare system. Now, I have to be careful because just saying this much probably get us in trouble on TikTok, right? So the point being is that Karen has already kind of, in my opinion, tipped her hand that she may be intending to put the healthcare system on trial. And the way that would be done, in my opinion, is this. If you admit, and that's the big thing, if you admit that Luigi did what they're accusing him to do, is there a scenario in which that is seen as an act of self-defense or defense of others? That literally the healthcare system and its increasing denial of claims, people are dying by the thousands every single day by having their claims denied. And a person may have decided that they were going to take out and punish the healthcare industry for killing people over and over again with their policies. And if that's the case, one could make an argument that it was an act of defense of others. By stopping this process, by making it clear that you can't get away with doing these policies and sitting behind a desk, making money for your shareholders while lives are being lost, somebody's going to pay. That could be an argument. And so there's a possibility that this could be a landmark case in the United States where the healthcare system is put on trial. Now, I don't imagine, I'll get off the mic here. I don't imagine that any judge is going to allow, or at least attempt not to allow, the healthcare system to be put on trial. They'll be like, sorry, this is a murder case about, did he not, or did he shoot Brian Thompson? That's it. We don't care. The healthcare system's not on trial. But if his defense is, yeah, I did it, but I did it to save lives, then the healthcare system could be put on trial.
Right. Thank you. That's what I was getting at. And no, thank you for explaining that. That's one of those cases too, where it's like, man, when I originally started doing these streams, I really tried hard to not have a case that I would zero in on, because just like the way my brain works, it's hard. It's like scatterbrain. I like to look at this case, then I like to look at that case. This Idaho 4 case has been something where it's like, okay, now my brain is like fixated on it. It's like fixated on it. So I appreciate whenever you come on and you and I have these lives together where it's like, I can get filled in on that, because I had only ever seen the headlines. You kind of woke me up to a bunch of other stuff with, like, whether it be a PSYOP or whatnot. And I also just want to say this too quick. If this feed drops, we will be right back on. Well, or at least I will. I'll peel it and I'll come back. Okay. So you had asked me then, what was I keeping up with this week? And the Dateline episode dropped. That's what I was talking about tonight on my stream. And I started to think, again, from a 40,000 foot view through the lens of, like, are they telling the public one thing, but then there was other stuff going on behind the scenes in the background? Like, you look at what happened in the news in the last week. Well, we had the leader of the Sonora cartel, the leader, get taken down in Salem, Oregon, which is on that same trafficking highway that the Idaho 4 happened. And you look at the funding that started at the end of 2019 and early 2020 with the NIJ and the research arm funding Washington State to look into predictive criminal behavior in emerging adults in a non-classroom setting. And I looked at the timing of this Dateline NBC dropping, and my wife, Mrs. Birdie, she made a comment. I had no idea that this comment was even going to really wake me up to this. She goes, this documentary, for it being like Dateline, it seems like somebody was like, oh shit, that comes out in 2 days. We got to finish this. And they just put it together quickly and put it out. I started thinking, like, holy shit. Like, look at the timing of that bust that happened in Salem, Oregon. That's right up the road from it. And that's a huge rug operation. Now, and if the C group, when I say that, that's a TikTok friendly way to say cartel. So I'm not going to keep repeating it. But C group, that's what I mean in the chat when I say that. If they had infiltrated U.S. universities and it was just tied to one of the biggest C group takedowns of all time, I feel like they would need a different public-facing narrative than that. I think it would cause massive public panic and collapse, like, potentially the entire Greek organization system. So that's where the Dateline timing of this documentary drops. I'm like, wow, they're just reinforcing the narrative. They're making this guy look creepy. They're not really doing any investigative journalism. They're just pulling out emotional heartstrings. And it started right from the beginning when they asked the roommate who moved out, her mother, they go, why do you think he did this? And she just goes, because they're beautiful. And I'm just like, I'm like, hang on, wait, what?
Right.
Like, come on. That's totally just playing on the public that doesn't know anything about the case.
I could rant all night long about the inconsistencies in that thing. And let me say a couple things. I want to address the drug thing, the whole campus thing first.
Yep.
And then if you want to get more into the to that Dateline episode, I got lots of opinions. But one thing I can say about the whole scenario about the money and the cartels and stuff like that is, out of all the theories I've heard, one of the things that somebody said that really, really stuck with me was Both Pullman, Washington, and Moscow, Idaho, these are tiny, tiny places. They survive only because of the university campuses. That's the only reason they survive. Their whole existence is those campuses. If people are afraid to send their children to these campuses because there's a rampant drug problem or because there's psycho killers on campus, they're never going to send their kids to the campus, which leads to we need to make sure we get a quick conviction and we convince people there is no drug problem in this place. It's safe to send your kids here. There's no drugs here. There's no major crime here. It's one psycho killer. We've taken care of the problem. End of story. And so there's these elements out there in the conspiracy theory world that says that there's insider informants, there's confidential informants and here's the scenario basically, right? Is that law enforcement has been working on a long-term drug case for a long time. And what they don't want to have to do is admit that they're trying to break up a major drug operation in the Moscow, Idaho area. So if one of those people in the house, a survivor or whatever, was involved in that case whatsoever, they're going to try to bury the confidential informant information so it doesn't come out, because the last thing they want to do is admit they've got a problem that's not under control. So it's easier to spin a narrative of a psycho killer and say there's no problem rather than admit why it is we're protecting and letting people lie about what really happened, because they don't want to uncover we got a bigger problem here and you shouldn't send your kids to this school.
Yes. And to go to the Dateline about how they're not going to tell people. I already know, just because I feel like I know you from our conversations, that there's no way that this shit got by you. The search that they showed on YouTube of Ted Bundy being spelled Ted H7NDY. Okay.
Right.
I immediately go, that's a breadcrumb. And then people in the comments were like, no, that's because that's how Brian Coberger typed it. How is Dateline going to know that? Just like how is Steve G knowing that he has star watching apps on his phone? Like, guys, this is the most federally redacted case in modern history, and it's redacted to high heavens. You think that Dateline NBC is going to be doing all this stuff? And I said, okay, so I don't believe that they would know how he spelled that search in YouTube. And if that's the case, then they just accidentally misspelled it. And people go, well, the H is above the B and then the 7 is by the U. And I'm like, okay, well, don't you think an editor or somebody that's watching this prior to releasing it to tens of millions of people would probably catch a misspelling like that? So I went down the rabbit hole of, well, what does H7 mean? And you start looking at, like, is Brian Coberger like a pawn? Is he the narrative release valve that if this shit goes sideways, this op gets burned, and we need a public-facing fallout preventative measure that's emotionally palatable for closure to continue this operation going on, as you brought up Scarpa did with the mob back in the day, how they framed people for crimes he committed to keep the operation going on. Well, you look at H7, okay, it's a chess move, and it's a super significant square on the chessboard. And it talks about how it's used to take down the king. Guys, if you don't think that the feds would throw a little FU to the C group after they got their guy in Salem, Oregon, and I don't know, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Either way, I'd like to think in my brain that if that was the case, well, at least my brain has the ability to critically think enough. I could be way wrong, but again, how weird is it that shit lines up?
It is weird, and I did catch it right away when I think they mentioned something about, he was searching for Ted Bundy, and I think they said misspelling things, and then they showed it on the screen. But like you said, that would have been a recreated spelling. So then the question becomes, why did they do that? Now, so I think, like I said, I've always been like the way that you think, because you're like, okay, wait a minute, what if that's something, and you go follow it down. I will say along that lines though, they said like 5 times during that episode, we have secret inside information provided to us by the FBI that it's never been seen before. And I was losing my mind. I'm like, why the hell is law enforcement and the FBI providing the mainstream media insider information that's never been seen before? This is the kind of shit that I can't stand. It makes my head explode. That shouldn't happen in the first place.
Dude, I'm not even joking to you. When Mrs. Birdie and I were watching it, I literally had to throw the remote to the other side of the couch because I kept pausing it and I would just look at her and I could tell she's trying to watch it. And I'm just like, of course they have a source. What source is this? No source. They're like, we trust our source. Well, who is the source? And how is just like that one guy gets on there, he goes, well, there's rumors that we heard that even Brian Coberger's father was getting suspicious of him in the car ride across state lines, where he's like, my son drives a white car. My son has some cognitive disabilities. My son doesn't have a girlfriend. Really? You're going to go on here and you're going to say that you know that conversation in that car? Get out of here.
I made I don't know if you saw my video, but I made a huge Keith Morrison impersonation, because that moment with the car, they're like, and his father mentioned, hey, for the first time, I'm wondering, can my son be involved? They're looking for a white car, and my son drives a white car. And Keith Morton goes, indeed.
Yeah,
and I'm
I can't even look at Keith Martin. I can't even look at him. Get him off the screen.
How many white cars are? Oh, he had a white car. Indeed. How many white cars are in that area?
Just talking about it is making me sweat, because it's like, look, guys, that was the biggest. We're not actually going to talk about any evidence. We're just going to keep the narrative going by pulling on emotional heartstrings. I also found it very weird that this entire time they were saying that Maddie and Kaylee were best friends. Well, now apparently the roommate that moved out is Maddie's best friend.
Ashland's her best friend, right?
And there was a chase in the stairwell, and that's how the sheath and the it's just like, what the hell are we talking about? I lost my
mind when they did that. And then the killer chased Xana down the thing, and she was in the kitchen, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and Ethan was carved, all this shit. Like, so.
And the killer sat down in a chair for a while.
Not only, look, okay, see, now we got ourselves all riled up. Let me just say this. Not only did this guy, if it was Coberger by himself, let's look through that lens, had no signs of entry, no signs of exit. He's not on camera in his car. There's no trail of him outside in this, with anything on the ground. There's just touch DNA. On top of that, he commits this with such precision that it's like a Jason Bourne timeline, while making time to sit and rest, everybody.
Because he's exhausted. You don't realize the adrenaline.
Give me a break.
The jumps they made in that show were disgusting, in my opinion. And at first I had to remind myself, because when I was doing the whole thing about, he attacked Maddie first, and then Kaylee accidentally got involved, and then Xana heard it and then they're saying this. That was a lot of noise. There was a lot of noise, and I'm like, if there's a lot of noise, then why the hell doesn't Dylan hear shit? Like, none of this makes sense. And then he catches Xana because she comes up to check on the noise, and he chases her. And I was looking at my wife like, what the fuck?
Dude, we were the same person to our wives, I'm sure, watching this. Like,
right. And then I had to remind myself. They started that whole conversation by saying, this is the best guess that we can make. So they did tell you that we're going to completely just pull this out of our ass when we get started. They did, at least they said that. We're going to pull this out of our ass. But then I was like, where the hell was all this from? What are you talking about?
Dude, did you also see, bro, that when the Elantra took the turn, how they sped up the footage to make it look like the Elantra is going faster? I'm like, you're telling me that a Hyundai Elantra is making a turn like a freaking race car?
Yeah. By the way, I have to tell you, I'm getting begged in my chat, which I don't think you can see, to ask you about, and I already know what it is because I've seen it myself. But I've been asked you about the green Elantra.
So there was a creator on YouTube, Truth and Transparency, and I can't remember if it's Lana or Lana.
Lana, yeah.
Lana, yeah. Okay, so third option. So I'm sorry about that. Truth and Transparency. No. The video is incredible. I showed a little bit of it on my live, but pretty much what happened is, so I'll bring up another case as an example to help people understand what I try to mean. So in the Karen Reed case, when the SUV is in the garage at the police department, the prosecution and the police are saying, nope, see, we're not even on that same side as the broken taillight. It's not on the same side of the back end of the car. Somebody noticed, oh, that camera is mirrored. Well, let's mirror the camera. And then it's like, oh, shit, no, you guys are on the same side as the broken taillight in the garage in police custody. Okay, so that's kind of the analogy that I'm going to use as a preface for this. It can apply to night vision. Night vision will make orange, green, and yellow show up white. You can look at a pumpkin in night vision and it looks white. So this creator had gotten somebody who's like a specialist in cars to look into all of the footage of the white Elantra. This dude picked up on the fact that every time under a streetlight, there was a hint of a green hue. and tinted windows. So then you start thinking about, oh shit, well, maybe the car is really not even white. And maybe that's why the car looks like it's not even the same as Coberger's. Maybe that's why they put out 2011 to 2013.
And there's a green Hyundai Elantra that lives at the house
scene
behind it
while it's getting torn down. So everyone wants to say Coberger went back for the sheath. Dude, this guy is at the scene getting torn down in broad daylight.
Right. Here's the thing, though. This is what I want to know, Bertie. Is the jury is Ann Taylor gonna bring up the green color on that? Is she gonna go as far as seeing the tint? I know that Ann Taylor is gonna bring up this, which is there's no continuous loop of that car. So you telling the jury this is suspect vehicle number 1, and now this is also suspect vehicle 1, and this is also suspect vehicle 1. That's for the jury to decide if that's the same car in all 3 shots. You're trying to lead the jury by saying that's the same vehicle, but. Do you think she's going to go as deep as Lana, for example, and look at the color and the tint and show that that's a green Elantra or hint that it's a green Elantra? What do you think?
No, they're not going to go that deep. And I don't think that they would have any incentive to actually find the truth. Because what ends up happening, and they also pointed this out in the Dateline documentary, there's so much pressure on the prosecution to just get a conviction that truth and transparency goes out the effing window. Okay, they just got to keep their jobs. They just got to keep bringing home the checks so they could pay their rent. They could pay their car payment. They don't care about the truth in such a high-profile case. They care about their career. If they don't get a conviction, then their career, they're looked at as they're a weak prosecutor, and they're letting somebody walk. Whether or not it's the right person or not, that's disgusting. That's one of the worst parts about high-profile cases is it becomes about the attorney's careers, which is gross, and it's disgusting, and it's a terrible misjustice for a lot of people that have been wrongfully convicted. Not even just applying to this case. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to go on this tangent, and I hope you're okay with the switching gears for a minute, because I realize the car is a big deal, but there's not much we can do about it. I mean, it's like, oh, maybe it has a green tint, and I agree, it does kind of have a green tint. That's for sure. But I want to switch gears. This is one of the things that made my head want to explode. Over and over and over. They're trying to paint the narrative. Brian Coberger is socially awkward. He's not good with girls. He hates women. He's a misogynist and whatever. And yet, we know he went to that party and got 2 girls' phone number. They even had a guy, good-looking guy, say, man, I was trying to get this girl's phone number, and freaking Brian Coberger scooped me on it and got her number first. And I'm like, this guy's a player. So which one is it? Then they're like, oh, there's a girl on campus that shared an office with him, and she had feelings for him, romantic feelings for him. Oh, wait a minute, I thought he wasn't good with women. Oh, and when her house was broken into, she goes to Coberger's house and spends the night with him. Wait a minute, I thought he wasn't good with women. Which one is it? Is he a misogynist and he hates women, or is he picking up girls' phone numbers left and right? And I want to explode.
Well, and somebody in the chat just said, and he's got some cojones because he's like, this girl's husband came up and tried to get me to stop. Hell no, I'm sliding over. I'm going to the pool. I'm getting what's mine. It doesn't make any sense. So
well, and the husband thing is a horseshit too. I want to say this: they didn't say what the husband did. They said the woman was married. She gave a glance to her husband as if to indicate I'm uncomfortable. Yeah, and her husband came over. They didn't say the husband
help signal.
Right. And they didn't say the husband came over and said, hey, dude, she's married, leave her the hell alone. He just may have come over and kind of stood in the area. Maybe it wasn't clear to Coberger she was married. They never made it clear what was said. They just said, he didn't get the hint. He continued to try to hit on the girl. Well, maybe he didn't get the hint because maybe the guy didn't even say anything. They didn't tell you what was the conversation. They just said he came over. But they didn't say what was said. I don't know. It was very prejudicial.
Yeah. No, it totally was. And I'm not trying to seem distracted. I'm just going to throw a quick message to my mods. If anybody in the chat is bringing up that I should talk to Crime Tiger, just block them immediately. You know what? Here, I'll talk to Crime Tiger. Here you go, Crime Tiger. Oh, I broke my freaking horn. There you go. You want to get out of here. I never do that. I love my chat. I love talking to the people. And I don't care if people disagree. She can fuck right off. So, all right, that's that.
Fair.
Sorry.
But yeah, that episode, there were some things admittedly, to be fair, there were some things that looked kind of bad for Coberger, right? There were some things that I was like, ooh, yeah, that kind of looks a little maybe cringeworthy. But the fact that so much, as one more perfect example, Keith Morrison and his frickin' voice, people were coming down from this famous hiking hill, but here's the thing. Brian Coberger was going up the hill.
Yeah,
I'm like,
alone.
who fucking cares? So he likes to go. He doesn't know anybody in town. He's a brand new student. He knows nobody in town. So he likes to go out at night and look at stars, which, by the way, has been a consistent argument of the defense, is that he's a stargazer. So he's going up to the top of the hill at night when it gets dark, and they're like, and then they bring on the profiler. Well, these kind of people like to act in shadows.
The worst profiler
he likes
of
to be
all
in the
time.
dark.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I was like, are you guys kidding me?
Yeah, no, that profiler, that was a profiler on bath salts. That's what that was. Like, I don't understand. Like, so again, this guy just moved across the country. He's been there a couple of weeks. He's putting himself out there. He's on the spectrum to where he's a little bit socially awkward at times, or it comes off that way. The text message too. Like, look, I said this last night on my live. Every single person has probably approached somebody that they're attracted to and completely fumbled the bag with a first text or a pickup line. Yeah. I mean, you're nervous. I really enjoy that activity. Yeah. It's awkward. It's maybe a little bit too formal, but he's going to get roasted either way, because even if you would have said, damn girl, you were looking fine in that bikini yesterday at the pool party, then all of the red flags are going to go off. But this guy was being a gentleman, and he said, hey, I'm pretty sure we talked about hiking. I really enjoy that activity. It's still made out to look weird.
I don't even know if I should do this. I've made ridiculous, embarrassing things. When I was in my 20s, I worked at a convenience store, and this girl that came in on a regular basis, I thought was cute. I thought she was flirting with me. I thought we were hitting it off, but I'm super nervous. I'm super shy. Like a moron, she writes a check, and I'm thinking, oh, I've got her address. I'll send her a little note, let her. Oh, yeah, I had the police called on me. And they're like, why are you stalking this girl? And I'm like, oh, my God, I'll never do shit like that.
Oh, my God.
I was just nervous. And I thought, I'm not even on the spectrum, and I made that mistake. So, yeah, that'll never happen again.
Oh, yeah. And real quick, I just want to address May. No, I wasn't saying he was being I said in the text, he could have been way less of a gentleman is what I meant, and just been, whatever. But devil's advocate, I'm not going to lie, bro. That's like if we were buddies when that happened, I would have to roast you for that. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Well, good thing you've got somebody doing it for you. So I've got a buddy that busts my balls on a regular basis.
Oh, that's amazing. Dude, so did you ever talk to her again? Did it work out?
Oh, no. It's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. My aunt worked at the police department, and so she was the one that contacted me on behalf of the police saying, hey, you know what? I got an officer that works with me that says, hey, she found your name. And it was so humiliating. Never make that mistake again. My entire point of that is, when you're young, now he wasn't as young as I was at that point, but when you're young, you make stupid mistakes, especially if you're a little socially. I've always been shy. So being a shy guy, I don't know how to approach girls, and I made a lot of really dumb mistakes that apparently look like you're a serial killer. I didn't kill anybody, but apparently that's a little bit serial killer vibe, and so there it is.
Oh, man. Dude, somebody said they would have lost it if you were like, yo, she's my wife. Like, oh, man. Dude, no, I feel like it might only be right if I share a story then, so that it's not just you. Mine's
perfect.
Mine's not that bad.
Of course.
Maybe.
Thanks for prefacing that.
But probably the most embarrassing moment that I had was in high school, like as a sophomore at like a homecoming dance or whatever. When like the slow dance songs come on, I was dancing with this girl. Like she wasn't my date. Like I went by myself and whatever. We were just like dancing, and I went to go like say something to her, and it's loud, so you can't really hear. As I go to like say something and open my mouth, her hair like perfectly goes into my mouth and rips the gum out of my mouth. And now I'm at homecoming. There's gum in this girl's hair. I panic. I let go. I just walk away. She's confused. And all I hear is this gum? And like, dude, I got a Mountain Dew and I hid in the bathroom. So that's
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's beautiful. It's taking us back to good times.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's terrible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I remember I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm sitting in the bathroom drinking Mountain Dew. And then it's like kind of almost like the meme of like, well, then you hear the Usher song that's like, peace up, A-Town. And then you're like, fuck, now I got to go back out there. I got to face it.
That's hilarious. Good thing she didn't say that. Did that guy just spit gum in my hair?
No, it was like the sticky hands, like when you throw the sticky hand, you like grab something. So,
Wow.
but yeah, no. And I'm sure Mrs. Birdie's getting
oversharing tonight.
Yeah, Mrs. Birdie's probably getting a kick out of this too. But someone said that's worse than Devil's Advocates. Chat, do you think type of 1 on who's, if you think my story is worse, type of 1. If you think Devil's Advocates is worse, type of 2.
I don't think you had the police called on you. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
it's pretty split.
I got a 1
They're
over
both
here.
bad.
I got a 2 over here. I got a 50-50 split on here.
Yeah.
Devil's is worse, somebody says over here.
Yeah.
Mine is worse.
Oh, that's great.
But here's the thing. That's my point. Like I've done a lot of stuff that if you take it out of context and you're building a narrative would make me look like a really bad person. And I'll just say for my own defense, I'm not a bad person.
Right.
I'm a really good person. But I've done things that I can tell people could pull out of context and make me look really, really, really bad. Because I've got skeletons in the closet. I've got embarrassing moments in the closet. And if you string them together just right, you can paint a narrative of me being somebody that I'm not. And that can be done with anybody.
Well, and ultimately, I think you just hit the nail on the head with which is what's kind of off-putting to the masses is that they made normal things that anybody that can be honest with themselves and look in the mirror, they've probably done in some way, shape, or form. Everything that they put on that, again, outside of now brutally unaliving 4 people, allegedly, we don't even have to bring that up. Just the way that they framed it in that situation is crazy. Like, this guy's guilty. He used Instagram. This guy's guilty. He went hiking by himself in a town he didn't know anybody. This guy's guilty. He's trying to make friends in a new city at a pool party. This guy's
how
guilty.
About this one? This is the one I can't stand. This guy's guilty. He searches serial killers and how to commit crimes, and he's a criminology student. Like, how many times did they say in the episode, well, he could have been doing this for research because he was a criminology student. We're not sure. And I kept saying, but you sure the hell will speculate all day long that it's for nefarious purposes. By the way, here's another creepy thing. I search Ted Bundy and different serial killers. I've always been interested in those kind of things. I'm into true crime. So does that make me a killer? Because, God forbid anybody goes missing around me because they'll look at my history and go, well, Devil's Advocates, he's been looking into serial killers in his past, and they'll just pull shit out, spin it together, and I'll look guilty.
Well, it's interesting too, because I would guess that the majority of people that are in this chat or on this live, or maybe watch other creators or content or documentaries about this stuff, they've all what did you have to look up a documentary? You look up the name of the person. You look up the case by looking up that person because you're interested in it. And it's funny because the same people that are talking about this case and talking about these crimes, clearly looking it up, will then say he's guilty. Like, how are you so fluoridated, mouth-breathing zombies that you can't see the hypocrisy?
Get this. Now I'm gonna really run a risk with my female audience on this. Brian Coberger had phone numbers of females on his phone from WSU and from Idaho, and they point out none of them were the actual victims in the house, but he had pictures of college co-eds. Oh my God, you mean a young guy who likes the female form and downloads females? That makes it like they're trying to he looked at females. I'm like, every teenage boy in America has a bunch of females probably on their phone. That doesn't make them a killer.
Yes. Well, and that's where again, my brain goes, well, it's like, what is a logical explanation that's anything other than he wanted to unalive them because they're beautiful and he couldn't date them? Well, maybe, again, if there was a giant operation going on and there's some sort of surveillance, or like he's in the background, like as a handler, maybe that's why he's around their house 23 times. Maybe there's a bunch of people that have infiltrated the school. I mean, you look at the number of busts that have happened from 2020 to 2025, they're at record highs in that area. And there's like 10 to 15 giant C group busts with, again, most recently, the leader of one of the biggest C groups in the world getting taken down. So my argument is this: the timing of the NBC Dateline, the timing of that bust, all this stuff with the Idaho 4 and all of the rumors that come out about how it's on this trafficking highway. What I'm saying is that a 5-year operation to take down the leader of that big of an organization is a very, very realistic time frame. If you think that's going to happen overnight, you're crazy, and I think you're out of touch with how this stuff goes down.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm not saying you're not onto anything right there. I've been staying away a little bit from the drug angle for multiple reasons. One, because you can't talk about it in detail on TikTok without getting violations for talking about substances, right? And even saying it, that's probably going to get me in trouble. But the other thing is just like, I feel like there's so many other things that I've been focused on, but it's definitely out there. That's definitely the biggest problem I've had with that narrative is tying it into Coberger, and maybe he used to have an addiction issue himself, and therefore he may be an enforcer for, like, that whole line kind of becomes a little bit like, these aren't even the same substances that he was addicted to, right? So right. Then I step back a little bit. But again, I'm not saying I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I tend to get a little bit more quiet when we talk about it, because I just feel like I don't know how I feel about that being the primary narrative, but timing is everything, like you said. So when they come out with a documentary, there's a reason for the timing. You know?
Yes, there is. And I would say when I first got into this case, I will say, I was kind of like, it has to be one of these things. It has to be one of these things. No, it could be parallel things. If you're going to do and commit that many resources to this, and you're going to have like damn near a CIA level PR team creating the narrative for this, right? You know, and people in my chat are asking me to ask you, what are your thoughts on Steve G?
In general?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I've said it before to you even, but I don't understand why there's such an unprecedented gag order in this case, but Steve runs his mouth to everybody in their dog. He goes on every TV show, every opportunity he can and he keeps leaking new pieces of information nobody else is leaking. Oh, did you know my daughter was punched in the face? Did you know this? Did you know that? You know, hinting that there's biological DNA of Coberger on the leg of a victim and all kinds of, like, Steve just repeatedly, every time he opens his mouth, he's coming up with some new piece of data. And I'm thinking to myself at this point, I used to be super sympathetic with Steve, but I'm starting to wonder, what the hell is Steve's motivation? He's running his mouth on every TV show and every podcast he can, usually around the timing of some major release that might, you know, change the course of this thing. Exactly. And out he comes again with more bullshit. So I'm starting to be very suspicious about Steve's motivations.
Yeah, somebody says the gag order doesn't apply to the family. Well, that would be, right? But in this case, it does, guys. And what I'm trying to say by that is, like, I've used this analogy. It's like, you go watch your local news tonight, and let's say something tragic happens where they don't know what happened to a family member, like if it was an accident or whatever. You'll always see the victims' families on the camera saying, please come forward, trying to compel people for the community to tell us what happened. Like, him being the only one and being very selective, and just, like, in my opinion, he would be a prosecutor's worst nightmare. He's going on all these shows leading up. Like, my general question is this: does that behavior align with somebody whose daughter and her best friend and two other roommates were just brutally unalived, and now they're coming up to a Supreme Court capital case where this guy's facing the firing squad? He's going on, you know, I know he allegedly knows the creator of Drunk Turkey Show and all this other, Ashley Banfield, but what really, really, really rubbed me the wrong way, or I guess made my spidey senses go off, is he said, he laid out whatever situation it is, and then he goes, and that's the truth, not some of this other speculation you'll hear about. So I'm like, well, what the hell's about to come out in the court docs? Because that's the only ever time you do an interview.
And let me correct somebody a little bit about what I would say. Look at the way Steve Gonsalves did some of the early interviews. One of the first interviews that he did on TV, he stated, I'm not leaking any information. I'm not telling, because he was told to shut his mouth. Everybody was told to shut their mouth. And he said, look, I'm not going to leak any information. And then he begged the guy on TV, tell people what happened. Don't make me do it. Don't make me be the one to have to say what happened. Why won't you guys tell people what happened? Because he knows what happened, at least in part, he knows what happened. And he's begging the reporter, tell people what happened. Don't make me do it. I'm not going to leak any information, because if you read between the lines, he has been told to shut the hell up about it. So people say, well, he doesn't have a gag order on it. He does, because he's telling you, I can't talk about this. I'm not going to leak information, but you guys need to step up and don't make me do it, because eventually I'm going to break and I'm going to tell things, because he is being monitored. And so there's something weird going on. So now the question is, has somebody got to him? Are they letting him filter information to the public to kind of control the narrative and say, hey, Steve's just off the rails? But I mean, it starts to get really suspicious about what, but he was I think, indicating that they were told not to say anything. And he kept saying, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to leak anything, but don't make me be the one who has to come out and tell you what really happened, because I know not to say anything. And he kept saying, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to leak anything, but don't make me be the one who has to come out and tell you what really happened, because I know.
Sorry, am I
Birdie's
back?
frozen on my side. There you go.
All right, I'm back.
You're back.
What I was going to say, I have a slightly different take on that. And that's, I felt like he's talking through the screen to somebody. I think he's saying, I'll talk about this if you guys don't handle your shit, to the people that maybe did it, where he's saying, someone be alpha, someone step up. He didn't have to go up the stairs, all these little things. And then I have a question. If I play this video, can you hear the audio? Just tell me, all these little things. And then I have a question. If I play this video, can you hear the audio? Just tell me. It's a fucker. Of course, you guys probably just heard me say that.
I heard that.
Yeah. I just get so annoyed where it just pisses me right off. But here, all right. Can you hear this?
He had more than enough time, and then he got right back out and he
Listen to what he
built, and
says.
he had a shovel in the back car. I would assume that the shovel had something to do with wherever he went. He buried that thing and got rid of that. Maybe he had plastic on the seats. Maybe his trunk was lined with something. Tosses it all in there, and he's gone. And they're not talking about cleaning up a murder scene. They're not talking about what do we got to do. They're literally just girls being girls, whether they're in and out on the path that they take, cleaning up a
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. So.
Yeah. He runs his mouth a lot, and then he slips little things like and here's the thing, like, I go back and forth with Steve as well. Let me give you an example from the Luigi Mangione case, but we won't go off the rails. We're going to stay on Coberger. There are people who will tell me in the Luigi Mangione case, we know he did it. We see him on camera shooting Brian Thompson, and I'm like, you see a guy in a mask who you can't identify in a grainy footage shooting somebody. For you to say, it's no question he did it, we saw him do it. So there's a part of me that thinks that Steve's doing the same thing. He's been told and convinced, maybe, that Brian Coberger is the guy. So he will continue to say, we know he did it because we see him, although it might be a masked man that we don't actually see, but we know it's him, so we're just going to keep saying, we see him doing it. And so what happens is then we hear that, right? And we think, what does Steve know that we don't know? Maybe he doesn't know anything. Maybe he just simply is repeating what he's been told. This is Coberger going into the house. And then he's like, well, how can you guys deny it? We've seen Coberger, which, by the way, nobody seems to have any video of Coberger going into the house. But
what if Steve was at the house during the 911 call? Have you heard this audio that I clipped?
No.
All right. I'm going to play this because I hear the girl that calls go, no, Steve. And then you hear what just sounded like the guy that we heard say almost, you hear him go, shit. Okay. Listen to this. This is also audio. I didn't do anything other than these 4 CapCut audio filters. I have like the CapCut Premium. I did noise reduction, enhanced voice, high resolution, and music enhancement. I will point it out. It's at about the 20 to 22 second mark. So I'll let the full thing play. And then I also have audio at the end where you hear Xana, Ethan, and then it sounds like you hear, they were shot. Okay? Fucking wild shit here.
11:55 a.m. 42.
I'll turn up the volume.
2nd November 13, 2022. I don't know, I'm a patient of emergency. Please talk to you. I've been talking to my whole patient. What? What is the address of the emergency?
Tell me that didn't sound like his voice.
Crazy. I never picked up the stuff in the background.
Yeah, I'll play it at normal speed.
AM 42.
I'll play it at normal speed. I'll play it right when it comes on. Dude, come on. That's crazy. Now listen to
Yeah.
this. Now listen to this one. Because what's so wild, they made this phone call. When you listen to this, I have this in enhanced audio on my profile on TikTok. I believe I have it on as a short as well. Okay, here's what's interesting. They said that someone was unconscious, but then you also hear them say, come on, we have to go check. Then you hear in the background, is she passed out? And you hear a woman's voice say, Ethan, Xana. And I almost started thinking, like, are there layered calls? Like, was there two calls? And then, because it kind of seems like the 911 operator is kind of like making sure she doesn't talk about what happened last night. No, what's going on right now? And I wanted to be like, if you're waiting 8 hours and this all went down, why are you even asking for a defibrillator at that point? If it was as brutal as you said it was, why are you asking for it? Why would anybody say, oh yeah, they have a defibrillator here? So this part here, you're going to hear a woman's voice say, Xana, Ethan, or Ethan, Xana. But then again, how wild is it? The caller doesn't say, oh my God, there is Ethan too. There's two people, right? You don't hear that. You also don't hear any sirens in the background either, even though the police were dispatched. You don't hear any ambulances coming. So here we go. Oh, hang on. I missed it. I'm sorry. I went past it. Here it is. Tell me you don't hear that now. So listen in the beginning. You hear, are they passed out? And then you hear Xana, Ethan.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
There's creepy ass stuff in the background too, like it's been clipped, like scrubbed. Keep listening to this. You hear someone say, Jesus Christ.
Okay, and how old is she? She's 20.
So, you know, like I've gone down a couple different things too. Where I'm like, is that audio? Is it two layers clipped? Did they play one audio in reverse? Then I started thinking, well, if you saw only available at not availables post where he got the footage of Krabby Abby catching a sheriff car driving by the Linda Lane footage 5 hours prior to when they said the 911 call happened, you start to question, was this the publicly released? They had to reenact this one, and they layered original details and this call over each other. Hence why you hear all of the scrubbed and warped voices.
The level of cover-ups and deception that would be involved, it just seems is so ridiculous. I mean, I'm not saying you're not right, but I just, the more we look at this stuff and analyze it, it's like,
it's right there.
How, right. But I mean, it's hard to wrap your brain around how much deception is going on, you know?
Well, it makes it like, yes, it does. It does. One of the things that I've always said is like, I think that a lot of people will take closure over the truth because sometimes the truth's extremely uncomfortable, and that uncomfortable truth could be that there is corrupt law enforcement officials, there are corrupt politicians, there are corrupt judges. They will lie to you and do a false flag attack on your soil to get you into a war that leads to a giant opioid epidemic in your country, and lie to you on why they're guarding poppy fields back in the day, why like Gulf of Tonkin those are my go-tos that I think most people can wrap their heads around. But it's like there's an uncomfortable truth aspect that people don't want to talk about. And like there's so much stuff in this case that when we do these live digs on TikTok and we kind of dive into that in the chat, I love the Hive Mind. the hive mind
Yeah.
it allows you to do this. You talked about the documentary getting released. I've even thought, dude, the FBI's got to work with Netflix, because if you notice, like, how does Netflix just crush it out of the park timing wise? With every time it seems like a case is about to pop off, they come out with just a wild documentary, and then there's millions of eyes on it, and there's fresh eyes. It's almost like they need just that last little bit of somebody to pick up on something to get it across the finish line.
Right. I mean, there was an early Luigi Mangione, the first documentary on Luigi Mangione. They had a law enforcement officer who was talking about the relationship between law enforcement and the media, and he specifically said, it's a great relationship because law enforcement is allowed to leak to the media what they want in the public information. They're allowed to, and now this part I'm elaborating on, but he did say that. He said, it's great to work with the media because we're allowed to leak things to the media that we want out there in the public. Conversely, it's not against the law for them to lie to the public when they're leaking things to the media. If they're trying to look for a bad guy and they want the bad guy to think that they're not looking for them, they will purposely lead the media to say something on airwaves so that the bad guy thinks he's gotten away with it or whatever. And so there's a leeway to allow law enforcement to lie to the media and feed them information on a regular basis to mislead the public and mislead the bad guys, so to speak. But it's also misleading America. And then they wonder why Americans don't trust law enforcement, why we don't trust our system, because they lie to us, and they basically admit that they lie to us, and then they're like, I don't know why there's such an unprecedented level of distrust in American law enforcement, because you guys are freaking liars. So
no,
you know?
it is dude. You want to see me crash out? I'll talk about the gaslighting that happens from the media, and how wild is it too? Like the media will sue people, or people will sue the media. But for example, in this Dateline case, let's go with kind of what you talked about, like how are they leaking this? My brain goes towards who's allowing them to. If it's really legit, who is allowing them to do this? Because actually, in this case, when those gag orders were initially put into place, three of the big 5 news networks or media organizations, they attempted to go against the gag order. They were shut down. That's so rare that media won't be let in. And so it's like, well, who would allow it? And you never will see the state prosecute the media ever.
Yep.
So, that to me is wild. No, I brought out the clown horn once for Crime Tiger, and you know what? I'll even loop her in with this, but here's to the media too. It's unbelievable. Actually, Dateline gets this one.
Dateline. Yeah.
Unbelievable. You guys have some of the most resources, I'm sure, and you guys put out, I'd give it a C minus. Maybe a D plus, but you've done decent work in the past, so I'm a little biased. I give you guys a C minus. For whatever it's worth. Birdie's Dateline grading system, C minus. Zero credibility to it or any weight. But well, dude, what else you want to talk about? Anything? You got anything else pressing?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, any time that we get together, we could literally probably be here till 3 a.m, and we can't do that to ourselves. But I mean, I don't know. Have we exhausted the Dateline thing? I mean, I think we covered a lot of it, and there's a lot of stuff obviously that you cover that I haven't dove into as deeply, and maybe vice versa. But I don't know. I mean, I'm open to talk about whatever, but also, like I said, we could literally be here forever because we got a million things to talk about.
I guess I'll talk about this too. Like Ethan is barely brought. I guess I'll give my closing thoughts on the Dateline. Okay, Ethan's really barely brought up, and it's kind of interesting how they don't talk about why it is he was included. If Brian's just doing this because he's jealous of these beautiful girls, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to tell you, I got a moderator telling me she's got some reserved comments for us to talk about. So,
cool. Let's hear them.
Done,
Perfect. That's fine.
Did you want to finish your thought though first?
Well, no, I mean, I guess I'll just say this to finish that up on that. It's interesting how he was never really talked about, and then they just dropped this bombshell of like his legs were carved. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the whole narrative was
huge.
about how Coberger he hates them because they're beautiful and they're popular and he can't get with them. And yet they contradicted themselves pretty much every 20 minutes about.
And they've never established this narrative about where they come up with the idea that he's bad with women and hates women because he can't have them. They repeatedly say that Brian Coberger can't have these girls, and so he hates women because he knows he can't. Where have you have never substantiated any of that. You just keep saying it over and over again. Well, he hates women because he can't have them. Where are you coming? Anyways, Kimberly, one of my moderators, said she's got some reserved comments. Kimberly, did you want to fire a question at me and I'll read it to everybody? How did he, BK, enter through the kitchen when Xana's in the kitchen? Remember? So some people have said he came in through the sliding glass door at the kitchen, but now we're hearing that Xana's in the kitchen and here's the noise upstairs. So
I think the simple answer is like, I'm at the point where this might piss some people off. I don't even know how credible those court documents are. Like, whether it's witness testimony, you look at Dylan or DM. Sorry, I don't know why people always say DM, but okay, so DM. She contradicts herself. She's like, I don't know if I was dreaming. I was messed up. I'm kind of in a dream state. I don't even know if I really saw this person. But then everybody wants to give her all this credibility of like, she's just this young girl who's drunk and is scared and all this stuff. But like, people want to say that it was a bad decision. Like, no, I would say a bad decision is staying at a job that you hate. A bad decision is staying in a relationship that you're not happy. A bad decision is, drinking too much and puking. A conscious, terrible choice, a conscious choice is seeing a man in your house with a mask on, walking by your roommate, not once or twice, with literally zero empathy. If that's your friend, even if she was just drunk and passed out, you see her on the floor, you're not going to help her. And then you add the man in the mask in on it. And then you add in the phone activity of scrolling Instagram, going on Indeed, having friends over.
Yeah.
8-hour delay.
I want to take a stab, no pun intended. Holy shit, that's a really bad pun. I want to take a stab at answering the how can Xana be in the kitchen and have the killer come into the kitchen. I play devil's advocate, so I thought, so here's the thing. If I was working it out, here's how it happens. Xana's in her room. The intruder comes in through the sliding glass door, goes up the stairs. 2 seconds after he goes up the stairs, Xana comes out to go to the kitchen for something like that. That's a simple answer how that could have happened. Now, keep in mind, they completely made up that story as this is what we think happened, and I don't think there's any evidence to support it, honestly. But when I was trying to work out how is that even possible, because that was one of my questions too. How did he come in through the sliding glass door if Xana's in the kitchen? Well, we don't know that the killer didn't come in before Xana went to the kitchen, went upstairs, and then Xana comes out to make a sandwich or whatever, and then hears a noise and comes up. So I can work through, if I was playing devil's advocates, how that could have happened that way. I don't think it happened that way, but that's how I would work it through.
Right. No, right. And that's what you'd have to, I would tend to agree with that. And then you also think about how he sat down on the chair. He took a breather because he's got adrenal fatigue. And then you listen to Steve talk and it's like, he set the kit on the kitchen table because he knew he was going to go. It's like, guys, I'm sorry, but if this is random and you've never been in the house, somebody brought up a really good point. It was actually, if you guys know the creator War Deadpool, he was up in my live the other day. And we actually had only available, not available in the chat the other day, which is cool. Super cool. He puts out great work. And War brought up this point of saying, why is nobody talking about, and I'm paraphrasing, this is not a quote, but it's like, he said something like, if this is random, you don't know the layout of the house, and you got to get all this done, dude, you have to come into that house like a bat out of hell to get that done in that time frame. You don't have time to think or see or like, you know what I mean? You have to go in and it's going to be chaotic.
I gotta make a comment. So one thing, Kimberly, if you got another question, fire it back up here because I know you said you had multiple. I only saw one, but let me point out something that bugged me about what you just reminded me. They hinted that Brian Coberger was using TikTok to watch the girls and get a view of inside the house,
right.
so that he knew where the doors were, and he knew where the windows were, and he knew when the activity in the house was and when it was quiet, because he's watching them on TikTok with absolutely no supporting evidence of that whatsoever. No indication that Brian Coberger was known to follow their accounts on TikTok. None of that kind of stuff. They just said he could have been watching the house by watching them on TikTok, and he would see. And then they showed videos of the kids in the house showing how you can see where the windows are and the doors are. They're making all that shit up for TV, telling you that's what Brian Coberger did. And now people probably think, oh yeah, Brian Coberger was watching them on TikTok and saw what the layout of the house was before going in.
God, it just makes me want to scream, because it's like, okay, fine. To me, like, people want to say some of the shit that we say is a stretch. That's a stretch, folks. That's a stretch in my eyes. And somebody in my chat, I don't remember the username, and I'm sorry, so let me know if this was you that said it. They go, well, it's also like sometimes the mainstream media might be a little bit incentivized to make TikTok look as dangerous as possible, because people don't watch their shit anymore. They get their news from not from us necessarily, but like from people on TikTok.
That's a topic we could get into if you want to before we close. So one of the questions Kimberly fired at me is a Luigi question, if you don't mind me fielding it out of order. So the question was asked by somebody, why, if Luigi Mangioni's arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania was illegal, isn't he out of jail? Why didn't he walk? And I want to make sure you understand. Even Ali Benevento was pointing this out. There's no way Luigi Mangione walks out of jail, even if they've got other evidence that they're using against him. They've got video camera footage. They've been tracking his movements. They got cell phone data. They've got images supposedly of him at the hostel. They've got a million ways to keep him in custody. So this is why it's not as simple as some people are trying to make it seem. That if Luigi's arrest was illegal, why isn't he on the street? He's not going to be on the street, folks. Unfortunately, for even those who want Luigi Mangione to walk, he's not going to walk. They are going to prosecute this case. Whether they have a gun or a manifesto or whether that arrest was illegal, he's not going to walk. So I don't know how to explain it other than just because that arrest may have been illegal, they've got other reasons to hold him, and he's not going to just walk out even if that arrest is deemed illegal, which they still haven't ruled on that, by the way. That's the other reason. The other answer to your question briefly is, why hasn't he walked? A judge has not ruled and deemed that arrest was illegal. That's an argument that the defense has made. It still hasn't been ruled on. But even if they rule it was illegal, Luigi's not walking out of jail that day.
That's a good take. I mean, it goes to show, if they want you, they'll get you.
Right. And here's the thing, and again, I don't mean to digress too horribly bad, but there's this game of telephone going on now, right? Which is, and I'll try to be brief. So a TikToker said, here's their logic. The logic is, if the arrest was illegal in Altoona, Pennsylvania, then the gun that they found can't be admitted into court, right? That makes logical sense. If the arrest was illegal, the gun can't be admitted into court. But then they took that and spun it, and here's what their opening line was. They have no gun in this case. There's no gun. They have no gun in this case. Luigi's going to walk. And I'm like, okay, first of all, and then people started repeating it. Did you hear the ballistics don't match? There's no gun. They can't match the gun. And people start repeating it, but it's a game of telephone. It gets more and more elaborated on every time they say it. And I'm like, the original poster was basically just saying, if the arrest was illegal, they can't use the gun, and that's true. But one, it doesn't mean Luigi walks, and it certainly doesn't mean that there's no ballistic match and all the other stuff that everybody's running with, because they just hear somebody say, they don't have a gun. Or did you hear they don't have a gun? Then they must not be able to match the gun. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys are running off on shit that you're not vetting. Hopefully you and I vet things a little better than that.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things too, like, where, look, I have no problem saying, like, yeah, that I was wrong, which it's happened. But I think the reason why it's different is because all the stuff that, like, at least for how I do it, I feel like me and Phoenix is probably, or she by far is like the most regular guest. Like, I would say at a certain point, like, her and I damn near co-host every weeknight, and I love her and she's great. But I think the reason what allows her and I to do that is that we're working like with the chat as we dig. Like, the chat's telling us what to look into. We do that. I feel like that's just a rare thing. And because when you get into situations like that, too, devil's advocate, outside of just the game of telephone, do you know what you could also compound on that to make the game of telephone even more dangerous? Is that once the game of telephone starts and it's a conversation that's just happening amongst strangers tend to not be able to get past the initial point of disagreement in a conversation. And it's a terrible thing. I hate that.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's a prejudice. Once you've heard some piece of information, then you tend to look for things, a confirmation bias, right? Which is we tend to look for things that corroborate what you already believe to be true, and you tend to reject the things that are counter to what you already believe to be true. So once they set the first narrative, you look for things that repeat and reinforce what you believe is the case. So that's part of the problem in it. Somebody had asked the question, why do you think they even brought up the whole Xana was chased thing? What was the intention of that?
Oh.
Here's one of the things, here's a hot take that I have a question for you while we're still on the live. I have always believed and maintained, based on things that Steve Gonzalez said and other things, that Kaylee's wounds were worse and different than everyone else. I've always believed that to be the case. If you notice on the Dateline special, they almost glossed over Kaylee like she was a no nevermind. The killer came in for Maddie, not for Kaylee. Kaylee got attacked, and then Xana interrupted him, and he chased her down, and then he carved up Ethan. It's almost like they don't even mention Kaylee. And so now all of a sudden, by telling you that he took time to carve up Ethan, they're changing who the target was. The target was Kaylee, in my opinion, or at least that's my best guess. But now all of a sudden they're like, well, Maddie was the target, or maybe Ethan. But we're going to completely gloss over Kaylee's injuries, like it almost was a no never mind. He went up there for Maddie, he carved up Ethan, so he's really mad at Ethan. And there's like hardly no mention about what happened to Kaylee, which I find is really interesting. I think they're trying to shift who the target was.
Well, what's even more dangerous is that it's like they're trying to provide closure without clarity. That's dangerous waters right there, because that's using propaganda as pacification, folks. That's a terrible spot to be in as just a society when your media understands that your memory is short, and it understands that this case struck an emotional nerve all over the world. You know, these young, innocent students brutally unalived, they're solely playing on that. You know, I hate to say it, the trauma has, like, when I say political value to them, I don't necessarily mean like political value in the sense that you would think, but it does have value for their network. And the longer it remains open-minded in a weird way, the more questions that swirl. So the big media productions come in and they offer closure without any clarity, no real like evidence, just high production value, right. You know, good lighting, sad music. It's about emotional management is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, right. They want, and again, because you and I both said it, people want closure. They want to feel like the bad guy got his comeuppance, and they don't want to have to think too deeply about things. So it's easy to pacify those people by saying, yep, here's the bad guy. Here's why he's bad and evil and spooky. We got him. We shot him by a firing squad. It's over. You can go back to your life. And most people are totally happy with it. I raged recently when a person told me, I don't know why you keep talking about these cases, devil's advocates. Why don't you just wait to find out what happened when they tell you what happened? And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, you sheeple. You're going to wait until they tell you what happened, and that's what I'm supposed to do. Don't ask questions. Don't critically think. Just wait until they tell you what happened, and why don't you do that? Why don't you just wait till they tell you what happened? Because they lie.
Oh, my God. Okay. I'm gonna try to stay calm when I say this, because I don't understand. If you want the truth, you're not going to get it from your television. That's the simplest way to say it. Like, if you want real answers, you're going to have to dig. And it's like they think we are stupid because every story that any mainstream channel pushes, it's relatively easy to understand. It's emotional digestible, or you can emotionally digest it. There's closure at the end. It's a feel good. See, we got the guy. Here's the story. They're away. And it's like, there's so many where it's just like, God, use the term like sheeple, but it's like they're narrative laundering. That's what they're doing. Like that's just, I think it's criminal. I think it's criminal that we can get lied to legally, and propaganda can be used on us.
Right. And as a kind of as we maybe are wrapping up here a little bit, as a parting thought, I want to say this. One person asked me, and it's a fair question, why do I rip on so much things like documentaries and whatever, and yet I feel that I have the right to come on here and spew my random bullshit and my questions and whatever. And here's the difference. When a documentary is done as a one-sided hit piece to convince people that this is what happened, I can't stand that kind of bullshit. That's and it forces people like myself and probably like you to play devil's advocates. It's like, that you're getting one side of the equation. So it forces people like me to go, wait a minute. Since you're going to be so biased on one side, let me present the other side of the argument. And the last thing I'll say about that is, this is why I loved, if you haven't seen it, I recommend you watch it, this special on Netflix that just came out on the Gilgo 4 murders. Because that's a documentary so far, I'm only on episode 2 of 3, that's done right. And the reason it's done right is because when you watch it, you're seeing both sides of the equation, and you're like, well, shit, now I don't know what to believe. Because it makes you think. It makes you have to go, well, shit, I thought this was a simple case. I don't know what to believe now, because now I'm seeing police corruption and cover up and lies. And yeah, this guy looks guilty, but what about all these corrupt cops? And it makes you think. And so I have no problem, and I love trying to help my audience think outside the box and put on that critical thinking hat and not trust everything that you're told like sheeple. So there's my hand.
Yes. You know what? I couldn't have said, I couldn't have said it better as far as like, you'll say when a documentary is good. I'm getting sick of the media machine pumping out just steaming piles of scripted dog shit and calling it journalism. The overpaid, perfect hair, blow-dried actors masquerading around as reporters that don't even know what the real truth is if it hit them in the face. Okay? Like, I just think you got kind of like some brain-dead legacy corporate sewage spewing people that have been deemed credible because they're on the television.
Yes.
They cherry pick facts. They ignore massive contradictions, and they put this ideological filter on everything they can that really just warps the honest lens. And I'm sick of it. If it doesn't serve their agenda, they won't talk about it. It'll just help sell more ads, or it'll protect the elite. It'll get buried and erased and censored. And, you get labeled a conspiracy theorist if you ask, why would somebody take 8 hours to call 911 when what they say happened in that house, right? You're a nut job. You're a danger to democracy. You question somebody's actions. She's just a child. We need to coddle her as if she's not an adult who made a conscious decision to go out and drink. And now one of the biggest unalivings in recent American history happens. And the bigger danger to democracy is being gaslit by the media every day. Sorry.
Yeah. I 100% agree, and shaming people for talking and asking questions, like we should be ashamed of ourselves. What about the victims? You're so disrespectful. I think it's respectful to get to the truth of what happened, and when you know that you're being lied to, I think it does honor to the people who lost their lives, if that's the case, to talk about what really happened and not believe the easy sell. So I realize not everybody agrees with that. They think it's disrespectful to even talk about a case. You should always trust law enforcement, and what they tell you happened is what happened. But I'm sorry, it's just, I don't live in that world.
I don't either. So I play the world's smallest violin to those people. It's just so bad. Then they think that they have a right to shame you when there's hundreds of thousands of stories and hundreds of hours on this case, and yet we are the disrespectful ones. No, the disrespectful ones, like I've said so many times in the past, the disrespect is to the victims in a case that's not high profile, that law enforcement really was corrupt, but it didn't get enough attention to solve it. The disrespect is that there was a corrupt cop or a corrupt judge that probably put somebody behind bars when they shouldn't have, and maybe wouldn't have been able to if enough people started asking questions. So with that being said, it's not disrespectful to ask questions. It's not disrespectful to use your brain. And I will get off my soapbox, but I kind of jokingly play that world's smallest violin. If you don't want to hear anything other than the mainstream narrative, then just shut the fuck up and leave us alone and let us do it for you.
Right. Don't watch our channel.
Yeah. Sorry for the language, but geez.
I agree. Like, we don't need to beat it to death, but yeah, if you don't like what you're hearing, just scroll past, this is for people who want to dive into the weeds, who want to ask questions, who want to say, is it possible this? That's what we do. And if that's not your thing, rather than be shitty, just move on.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed this again, as always, Devil's Advocate. Thank you for popping up here. I'm looking forward to next Monday already. Chat, if you guys want to go watch Devil's Advocate stuff, he's on YouTube and TikTok. He's got his username above his head. I also upload all of these lives the next morning. They'll be up by noon each day the next day. So my YouTube is Birdie Bombshells. If this TikTok ever does go down, that's where you will find me. I go live each weeknight, 7 p.m. Central.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. And if this format doesn't work out in the future, let me know what we could do different. I know you go on about an hour before me, and you probably don't necessarily like shutting down your stream of consciousness to go live, but we'll work it out.
Yep. No, we're making it work, and like we'll figure it out, man. So I enjoy like, you know, doing these and having you pop into mine, or if we co-host, however it is. I hope your chat feels the same way. And so thank you to everybody. I can't see Devil's Advocate chat. He can't see mine, but I can tell you, Devil's Advocate, you were getting a lot of love in mine. So
same here. Yeah, everybody's over here super excited about you. So I think despite our age differences, and of course you're not as good looking as I am, but other than that, we're pretty much right on par. So everybody loves it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we both apparently have no game when it comes to the opposite sex, and we have some embarrassing stories. But no, that was awesome.
Don't go to jail.
Yeah, no kidding. But well, I hope everybody has a great night. Shout out to my mods. Shout out to Devil's Advocate, and hope everyone has a great night rest and goes out and crushes the day tomorrow. Cheers.
Later.
See ya.
Thanks.
Yep.